Chapter 1870. Welcome, welcome, great Elder Hua. I'm proud that you're finally here. The arrogant Wu Shang and the others seemed to have changed into another person. They walked quickly to the gate of the Wu family and greeted the chief elder of the mountain-breaking sword sect with smiles, leaving Qin De aside. Family head Wu, we're a family from now on. There's no need to be so polite. Great Elder Hua said with a proud smile. He was wearing a linen robe, and his eyes were sharp. His body unconsciously emitted a strong sword intent. Yes, yes. Great Elder Hua, please come in. Hearing Great Elder Hua's words, Wu Shang's smile grew wider. He personally welcomed Great Elder Hua and the others into the bustling Wu family mansion. Suddenly, the entire Wu family mansion became very lively. All the families came forward to greet them, wanting to get closer to the mountain-breaking sword sect. The Qin family was directly isolated. Brother De, what should we do? Looking at the situation, Madame Jean Yi was at a loss. She could imagine that the Qin family would no longer have a foothold in White Sword City. Xinmei, Ruolin, are you willing to sacrifice yourselves for the Qin family? Qin De took a deep breath and looked at the pale-faced Qin Ruolin and Qin Xian with red eyes. He gritted his teeth and asked. Seeing Qin De's helpless eyes, the Qin sisters' hearts broke. They didn't know how to answer. They knew the consequences of being Wu Shufeng's concubines, but seeing the Qin family's current situation, they knew that they had no other choice. If the Qin family was destroyed, their fate would be even worse. Seeing Qin De's family in despair, Yi Chenfeng shook his head and said, Family head Qin, I have a good idea. We don't need to sacrifice Ruolin and Qin Xian to solve the Qin family's crisis. What idea? Qin De was startled. He looked at Yi Chenfeng and asked loudly. Destroy the Wu family. This way, the Wu family will not be able to form a marriage alliance with the mountain-breaking sword sect. The Qin family's crisis will also be solved. Yi Chenfeng said indifferently. Yi Chenfeng, is there something wrong with your head? How can you still be in the mood to joke at a time like this? Do you think this joke is funny? Qin Xinmei roared at Yi Chenfeng as if she had found a target to vent her anger on. Qin De and Elder Yun were so angry that their bodies trembled. Only Madame Jean Yi was deep in thought as she looked at Yi Chenfeng. Joke? Yi Chenfeng smiled and said, If you think this is a joke, then pretend that I didn't say anything. After he finished speaking, Yi Chenfeng no longer paid any attention to the furious Qin De's family. With his hands behind his back, he leisurely walked towards the bustling Wu clan estate. Where is Qin De? Just as Qin De was glaring at Yi Chenfeng with fire in his eyes, wanting to grab him and teach him a lesson, a deep voice resounded in the Wu family estate. Grand Elder Hua, Qin De is here. Hearing Grand Elder Hua's voice, Qin De's heart skipped a beat. The anger on his face was immediately replaced by fear. He immediately brought Madame Jean Yi and the others to the Wu clan's main hall. When he met Grand Elder Hua's sharp eyes and Wu Shang's mocking gaze, he immediately guessed that Grand Elder Hua was going to attack the Qin family before the engagement. Qin De, do you admit to your crimes? Grand Elder Hua looked at the nervous Qin De with beads of sweat on his forehead. Sitting on the armchair, Grand Elder Hua spoke. Grand Elder Hua, I have always followed the mountain-breaking sword sect's lead. What crimes have I committed? Qin De kept thinking of countermeasures in his mind as he braced himself and asked. Qin De, let me ask you, did your Qin family send someone to kill my brother? Wu Fandai, who was wearing a red Chong Sam embroidered with a phoenix pattern, said with tears in her eyes. Her face was smeared with light makeup, and her appearance was comparable to Qin Ruolin's. Fandai, you've wrongly accused my Qin family. Ever since we found out about Xu Shan's death, our Qin family has been searching for the culprit to avenge him, Qin De immediately explained. Patriarch Qin, don't be in a hurry to explain. I have a few questions for you. Standing beside Wu Fandai, the 10th disciple of the mountain-breaking sword sect, Wan Zio, who was wearing a luxurious robe, a crown on his head, and a white jade belt on his waist, said slowly with a hint of arrogance on his face, "I heard that someone from your Qin family was present when Xu Shan was killed. Is that true?" Yes. Although Qin De was the patriarch of the Qin family, he couldn't help but lose his imposing manner in front of a true disciple of the mountain-breaking sword sect. At that time, someone from your Qin family was sitting at the same table as the culprit. Is that true? The aggressive Wan Zio continued to interrogate. Yes. Qin De revealed a bitter smile as he admitted with a slightly trembling voice. According to the shopkeeper of the celestial immortal abode, the culprit knows someone from your Qin family. Is that true? Wan Zio revealed a cold smile. No, my Qin family doesn't know the culprit at all. Young Master Wan, please don't listen to rumors and wrongly accuse my Qin family. Qin De's heart trembled as he hurriedly defended himself. Wrongly accuse you? Wan Zio snorted and said, "Qin De, if you dare to lie again, I'll cut you down with my sword. I'll take responsibility for my own actions. I was present when Wu Shushan died. Ask me if you have any questions." Qin Rulan took a deep breath after seeing the pale Qin De, who had sunk into deep fear. She stood out like a proud and lofty winter sweet. "You were present." Wan Zihao revealed a thought-provoking smile. He looked at Qin Rulan, who was wearing a white floral dress. Her skin was as white as snow, and her delicate face revealed a trace of tenderness. His eyes grew brighter and brighter. On the other hand, Yi Chunfeng, who was standing to the side, revealed an appreciative smile. He admired Qin Rulan's commitment and pride. "Then let me ask you, who is the culprit?" Wan Zio fearlessly sized up Qin Rulan's delicate body and asked in a low voice. "I don't know the culprit." Qin Rulan suppressed the fear in her heart and said while biting her wet lips, "You don't know? I advise you to think carefully before you speak. If I find out that you dared to lie to me, not only will you be punished, your Qin family will also not be able to escape punishment." Wan Zio seemed like a superior who controlled life and death as he coldly warned. The Qin family is finished. Yes, the mountain-breaking sword sect is determined to make an example out of the Qin family and make the Wu family the #1 family in White Sword City. All the major forces smelled something unusual and started whispering to each other in secret. However, they did not sympathize with the Qin family. The law of the jungle was always the rule of the sword domain and could not be changed. Even the Bai family silently accepted this fact and was willing to give up the position of the #1 family in White Sword City to the Wu family, who was close to the mountain-breaking sword sect. "Young Master Wan, the culprit really has nothing to do with my daughter. It is related to a guard that the Qin family just recruited. In order to protect Qin Rulan and the Qin family, Qin De had no choice but to push Yi Chunfeng out." "Guard?" Wan Zio revealed a cold smile and said, "Qin De, do you think I will believe your nonsense? It seems that if I don't teach you a lesson, you won't tell the truth." Chapter 1871. Whoosh. Yi Chunfeng's words caused a huge commotion. "Who's that fellow? Why is he so arrogant? I've never seen him before. But since he dared to provoke the Wu clan and the Mountain Breaker sword sect in public, then he'll definitely die a horrible death." "Humph. Not only will he die a horrible death, the Qin clan will probably be finished as well." Numerous pairs of mocking gazes shot towards Yi Chunfeng in unison. On the other hand, Qin De was terrified to the point his scalp went numb, and he almost fell to the ground. Good. Qin De, you really have guts. You found a hothead to humiliate my Wu clan and the Mountain Breaker sword sect on this joyous occasion. I, Wu Shang, will declare that my Wu clan and your Qin clan are irreconcilable enemies." Wu Shang's eyes emanated a ferocious glow as he gazed at Qin De, whose forehead was covered in cold sweat, and he spoke in a ghastly manner. No. At this moment, Qin De wished for nothing more than to strangle Yi Chunfeng to death. It could be said that Yi Chenfeng's words had forced the Qin clan into a hopeless situation, and it was impossible for the Qin clan to turn the situation around. Wu Shang, you're really audacious. You actually ignored my warning. Do you really think that I wouldn't dare to kill you? Right when the various powers were waiting for the Qin clan to come to a tragic end, Yi Chenfeng seemed as if he'd become a completely different person, and he revealed a domineering aura that seemed capable of swallowing mountains and rivers while he spoke with awe-inspiring killing intent. You are? When he heard Yi Chenfeng's warning and sensed his aura that had suddenly become fierce, a person suddenly appeared in Wu Shang's mind, a person that caused him to successively have nightmares, and it caused his eyes to open wide. Yi Chenfeng didn't waste his breath and just pointed a finger at Wu Shang, who turned pale with fright. An extremely sharp finger sword shot out and tore through the air like a bolt of lightning, and it struck Wu Shang, whose pupils had dilated and didn't have the time to dodge at all. The finger sword struck down. Wu Shang, who was at the 6-star Daolord realm and full of ambition, was easily slashed into two by it, and his soul was even minced into pieces as he perished on the spot. Silence. Extreme silence. Witnessing the scene before them, everyone present was dumbfounded. They did not dare to believe that Wu Shang, who had just been filled with lofty sentiments, had turned into a corpse in the blink of an eye. Qinda, who just wanted to strangle Yi Chenfeng, was so scared that all the hair on his body stood up. He couldn't help but take 3 steps back. He didn't dare to approach Yi Chenfeng. Sister, I'm not dreaming, right? How can he have such strength? Qin Xinmei, who had been mocking Yi Chenfeng, pinched herself hard and realized that she wasn't dreaming. However, what had just happened was so unreal that she felt like she was in a dream. Sister, you're not dreaming. Qin Rulan took a deep breath and suppressed the shock in her heart. Do you remember what Qingfeng said just now? I think he really does have the ability to destroy the Wu family. Boy, you're courting death. Witnessing his father-in-law being killed on the spot, Wan Zihao was furious. He summoned a lower-grade transcendent saint weapon, a long shuttle engraved with reproduction patterns. It emitted a dazzling light and attacked Yi Chenfeng. He wanted to kill him with one blow. The long shuttle attacked with great momentum. Yi Chenfeng didn't dodge. He gently slapped his right hand and accurately hit the long shuttle. With a cracking sound, the long shuttle couldn't bear the power of Yi Chenfeng's slap. It trembled violently and turned into powder, drifting away with the wind. What? He smashed a lower-grade transcendent saint weapon with one slap? Who is this guy? How can his strength be so terrifying? Seeing Yi Chenfeng smashing the long shuttle with one slap, the experts of the big families were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. Qinda was even more frightened. How dare you offend me? Yi Chenfeng said coldly as he lightly patted away the dust on his hand. He looked at Wan Prides, whose eyes were twitching violently and whose heart was filled with intense fear. Wait, sir. Grand Elder Hua couldn't sit still anymore. He immediately stood up from his chair and stood in front of the trembling Wan Zihao. Zihao didn't mean to offend you, sir. Please give the mountain-breaking sword sect some face and don't lower yourself to Zihao's level. Humph, mountain-breaking sword sect. Yi Chenfeng snorted and said disdainfully, What if I don't give the mountain-breaking sword sect some face? Sir, you may be strong, but the mountain-breaking sword sect is not to be trifled with. If you insist on having your way, the mountain-breaking sword sect will have no choice but to accompany you. Although Yi Chenfeng's strength had shocked Grand Elder Hua, he couldn't back down now. He could only use the mountain-breaking sword sect to pressure Yi Chenfeng. I'll be waiting, Yi Chenfeng said indifferently. As soon as he said that, the soul force in his mind exploded, forming a powerful dizziness. It slammed into Wan Zihao's sea of soul, directly shattering his soul. Spurt! Spurt! Large amounts of blood flowed out of Wan Zihao's orifices. His vision darkened and he collapsed in a pool of blood, dead. Wanziheo is dead. Oh my God, his gaze can kill. Just how powerful is he? Why is he so terrifying? Seeing Yi Chunfeng kill the 10th disciple of the mountain-breaking sword sect, Wanziheo, with a single gaze, everyone present felt their scalps tingle. They didn't dare to look at Yi Chunfeng. Ziheo, Grand Elder Hua and the others' eyes turned red. Wanziheo was the 10th disciple of the mountain-breaking sword sect, and he was someone that the mountain-breaking sword sect had focused on nurturing. His death had a huge impact on the mountain-breaking sword sect. I'll kill you. Sensing that Wanziheo was dead, Grand Elder Hua, who was a 5-star Tao god, couldn't control the murderous intent in his heart. He summoned a middle-grade transcendent sacred weapon. The body of the sword was engraved with tiger patterns, and the handle was embedded with a skull gem. He performed the mountain-breaking sword sect's inherited sword technique and slashed at Yi Chunfeng. Ancestor-level sword soul break. Grand Elder Hua attacked with a shocking murderous intent. Yi Chunfeng stood still in silence. When Grand Elder Hua was 5 meters away from him, a pitch-black ancestor-level sword soul flew out of Yi Chunfeng's sea of soul. It broke Grand Elder Hua's killing move and sent him flying. So powerful. Yi Chunfeng is so powerful. Seeing that even the mountain-breaking sword sect's Grand Elder was no match for Yi Chunfeng, Qin Xinmei was deeply shocked. Thinking about how she had mocked and ridiculed him these days, her heart was filled with fear. As for Qinda, he revealed a remorseful expression. He regretted that he had eyes but failed to see the true God. Ancestor-level sword soul. Seeing the ancestor-level sword soul hovering above Yi Chunfeng's head and leaving a deep sword mark on his body, Grand Elder Hua, who was severely injured, widened his eyes and revealed a look of intense fear. You're a messenger of God. Messenger of God was the name that the major factions gave to the experts of the Heavenly Sword Hall. Normally, only the experts of the Heavenly Sword Hall could cultivate ancestor-level sword souls. I've offended the Messenger of God. I beg the Messenger of God to give me another chance to turn over a new leaf. Although the mountain-breaking sword sect was powerful, it was nothing in front of the Messenger of God. If the Messenger of God killed someone from the mountain-breaking sword sect, not only would the mountain-breaking sword sect not seek revenge, they would even apologize in person. Chapter 1872. I'm not a God's messenger. Yi Chunfeng looked at the panic-stricken First Elder when kneeling on the ground, as well as the dumbfounded experts of the various families. He placed his hands behind his back and looked at them coldly. Not a God's messenger? Great Elder Hua was even more confused. Then who are you? Several thoughts flashed through Great Elder Hua's mind as he tried to guess Yi Chunfeng's identity. However, even if Yi Chunfeng wasn't a God's messenger and didn't come from the Heavenly Sword Hall, he wasn't someone he could mess with. Because he had an ancestor-level sword soul, Yi Chunfeng could easily join the Heavenly Sword Hall and become a true God's messenger. I'm just an independent cultivator, Yi Chunfeng said slowly with his hands behind his back. He looked like a god of swords who had descended to the mortal world, exuding a domineering aura. An independent cultivator. After knowing Yi Chunfeng's identity, Great Elder Hua was overjoyed. Senior, please forgive us for offending you just now. I wonder if you have time to visit the mountain-breaking sword sect? Our sect master likes to make friends with heroes like you. Why? I killed your mountain-breaking sword sect's core disciple. Not only do you not blame me, you even want to recruit me? Yi Chunfeng's expression did not change at all as he looked at the smiling First Elder Hua. Although Great Elder Hua's heart was bleeding, he didn't dare to show it. He said humbly, Wanzio was blind to offend Senior. He deserved to be killed. The Wu family, who was so arrogant just a moment ago, was now in a dead end. Without the support of the mountain-breaking sword sect and Wu Shang, the Wu family's overall strength would be greatly reduced. It would be difficult for them to protect themselves, let alone become the top family in White Sword City. All right, I have nothing to do recently. I'll go with you to the mountain-breaking sword sect. Yi Chunfeng looked at Great Elder Hua, who was sweating profusely, and finally nodded. Get up. Thank you, Senior. Great Elder Hua stood up after thanking Yi Chunfeng respectfully. He didn't feel ashamed at all for kneeling in front of everyone. I killed Wu Shang. Who's in charge of your Wu clan now? Yi Chunfeng asked in a low voice as he looked at the Wu family members, who were all startled by the mere twang of a bow. This old man is Wu Dong, the old patriarch of the Wu family. At this time, a grizzled old man with a snake-headed walking stick slowly walked over with a sorrowful expression. He bowed deeply to Yi Chunfeng. Old master. Yi Chunfeng looked coldly at the white-haired Wu Dong and said, I killed your son, Wu Shang. Are you convinced? I'm convinced. Wu Shang had eyes but failed to see. He offended Senior and deserved to die. Although Wu Dong's heart was bleeding, no matter how angry he was, he did not dare to show it. It's good that you're convinced, Yi Chunfeng said with a cold smile. Senior, my Wu clan knows our wrongs. Please be magnanimous and forgive us. As long as Senior gives my Wu clan a way out, my Wu clan is willing to go to the Qin clan and beg for forgiveness. We will also leave White Sword City and never set foot here again. Wu Dong could only beg Yi Chunfeng for forgiveness. Even the mountain-breaking sword sect couldn't afford to offend Yi Chunfeng. Given the current situation, even if Yi Chunfeng killed the entire Wu family, the mountain-breaking sword sect probably wouldn't say anything. They might even clean up after Yi Chunfeng. No need. I don't have much of a relationship with the Qin family. You don't need to beg for forgiveness, and you don't need to leave White Sword City. Yi Chunfeng shook his head and said coldly, I only need to kill one more person, and I'll forgive you. Plop. Seeing that Yi Chunfeng was looking at him, Wu Shufeng, who had been arrogant just a moment ago, was so scared that his legs went soft. He immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed continuously, begging Yi Chunfeng to spare him. Senior, Shufeng is our Wu family's. Wu Dong's heart tightened when he saw that Yi Chunfeng was going to kill Wu Shufeng. He immediately wanted to stop him. However, Yi Chunfeng was even faster. A sharp sword light shot out from his finger sword and pierced through Wu Shufeng's head at a speed that was over 10 times faster than light speed. It crushed his soul and killed him. Ah! Wu Fandian, who was wearing a red qipao, saw Wu Shufeng's head explode. Her face paled in fright and she fell to the ground, revealing her beautiful legs. What did you say? After killing Wu Shufeng with one finger, Yi Chunfeng looked at the red-faced Wu Dong and said indifferently, No, nothing. Wu Dong's heart trembled when he saw Yi Chunfeng's cold eyes. The anger in his heart was replaced by fear as he spoke in humiliation. I thought you wanted to avenge him, Yi Chunfeng said with a smile. I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. Wu Dong's legs trembled as he hurriedly bowed. This person is too domineering. Sigh, who would have thought that something like this would happen on the big day of the Wu family? This is unbelievable. Yeah, I thought that the Wu family would become the most powerful family in White Sword City after they got close to the mountain-breaking sword sect. I didn't expect the Wu family to end up like this. I can only say that the Wu family's luck is too bad. Seeing Yi Chunfeng kill so brazenly and suppress the mountain-breaking sword sect and the Wu family by himself, the masters of the major forces in White Sword City were deeply intimidated. Great Elder Hua broke out in a cold sweat. He was still scared. If he had continued to insult Yi Chunfeng, he might have become a corpse already. All right, let's go. After killing Wu Shang and his son, Yi Chunfeng didn't continue the massacre. Yes, yes, please, Senior. Great Elder Hua nodded and bowed as he followed Yi Chunfeng out of the Wu family estate, which was completely silent and filled with the thick smell of blood. When he passed by Qinda and the others, Yi Chunfeng paused for a moment. However, he didn't look at the regretful Qinda and the trembling Qin Xinmei. Instead, he looked at Madame Jing Yi and Qin Ruolin, nodded at them, and turned to leave. Seeing Yi Chunfeng's back as he left, Qinda, who was covered in cold sweat, secretly let out a sigh of relief. However, his heart was filled with regret. He regretted that he had eyes but failed to see and wasted such an opportunity for the Qin family to rise. If he had treated Yi Chunfeng better, perhaps he could have used Yi Chunfeng's power to greatly increase the Qin family's status in White Sword City. It wouldn't have been impossible for them to step on the Bai family and become the most powerful family in White Sword City. Sister, I'm not dreaming, right? Is that person really the Yi Chunfeng we know? Until now, Qin Xinmei still couldn't accept this fact. How could a hothead that she thought came from the mountains suddenly become a peerless master of the mountain-breaking sword sect? Sister, let's go. No matter what, our Qin family's crisis has been resolved, Qin Rulan said faintly as she gently bit her lips. At this moment, the Bai family, as well as the other families, came to their senses and greeted Qinda, trying to find out Yi Chunfeng's identity. Although Qinda repeatedly claimed that the Qin family and Yi Chunfeng were just acquaintances and didn't know his identity, the other families in White Sword City still didn't dare to offend the Qin family because of Yi Chunfeng. Chapter 1873. The Mountain-Breaking Sword Sect was one of the 3 sects and 2 clans of the Sword Domain. It controlled 23 cities and hundreds of villages in the Sword Domain. It occupied the 100 Swords Peak, the source of the spirit veins in the mountain-breaking state. It was the holy land of cultivation that all sword cultivators in the mountain-breaking state yearned for. Senior Yi, the 100 Swords Peak is right in front of us. The mountain-breaking sword sect is located in the deepest part of the 100 Swords Peak. Great Elder Hua stood beside Yi Chunfeng like a junior. He pointed at the 100 Swords Peak, which was covered in thick clouds and overlapping mountain peaks, and said respectfully, "Well, the 100 Swords Peak is indeed a good holy land for cultivation." Yi Chunfeng nodded as he looked at the 100 Swords Peak shrouded in clouds and felt the rich immortal spiritual energy in the air. On the way to the mountain-breaking sword sect's warship, Yi Chunfeng got a lot of valuable information from Great Elder Hua and the others. Great Elder Hua also intentionally revealed that the mountain-breaking sword sect wanted to recruit Yi Chunfeng as their chief foreign minister. Although Yi Chunfeng did not agree immediately, his ambiguous attitude made Great Elder Hua very happy. He saw hope in winning over Yi Chunfeng. "Brother Yi, you're finally here." Great Elder Hua had already told the mountain-breaking sword sect's sect master, Powentian, about the changes in White Sword City and Yi Chunfeng's existence. When Powentian learned that Yi Chunfeng had condensed an ancestor-level sword soul, he was overjoyed. Not only was he not angry because of Wan Zio's death, but he also wanted to win over Yi Chunfeng, just like Great Elder Hua. Therefore, when he learned that Yi Chunfeng had entered the mountain, he humbled himself and greeted him personally. "Senior Yi, this is our mountain-breaking sword sect master, Powentian," Great Elder Hua immediately explained after getting off the warship. "Thank you for your hospitality, Sect Master Wentian." Yi Chunfeng looked at Powentian, who was dressed in a black leather robe. He had a square face and bright eyes. Powentian exuded an intense sword intent. Yi Chunfeng discovered that he was not a 6-star Dao God expert. Instead, he was a half-martial ancestor. He was only 1 step away from becoming a 1-star Dao ancestor. "Haha, Brother Yi is too polite. Come, please come in." Powentian laughed loudly and said in a heroic manner. When he first saw Yi Chunfeng, he found that there was nothing special about Yi Chunfeng. However, when he carefully sized up Yi Chunfeng, he found that Yi Chunfeng was like a cloud of fog that he could not see through. He could not help but think more highly of Yi Chunfeng. "Brother Yi, where are you from?" Powentian welcomed Yi Chunfeng into the Broken Mountain Hall and ordered someone to pour him a cup of fragrant spirit tea. Yi Chunfeng took a sip of the spirit tea and casually made up an excuse. "Because my master has ordered me not to reveal my origin," My master! Powentian and the others' eyes lit up. Many of their guesses had been confirmed. Because the entrance to the sword realm was sealed, and Yi Chunfeng had cultivated an ancestor sword soul, they did not think that Yi Chunfeng was from the outside world. Brother Yi, I have a presumptuous request. What do you think? Powentian quickly communicated with the upper echelons of the Broken Mountain Sword Sect and smiled faintly. Please speak, Sect Master Wentian. Yi Chunfeng put down the teacup in his hand and looked at Powentian, who had a sincere smile on his face. Brother Yi, I'm sure you know that in a little more than a year, the Sword Realm will hold the Sword Palace battle. This battle is extremely important to the Broken Mountain Sword Sect. If the Broken Mountain Sword Sect can win and become a Sword Palace, we will be able to obtain many resources that we have always dreamed of. However, among the 3 sects and 2 clans, the Broken Mountain Sword Sect's strength is only considered average. It will be extremely difficult for us to win. Therefore, I would like to invite Brother Yi to be the head honcho of the Broken Mountain Sword Sect and represent the Broken Mountain Sword Sect in the Sword Palace battle. However, Brother Yi, don't worry. Regardless of whether we win or lose, the Broken Mountain Sword Sect will definitely reward you handsomely. Powentian seemed to be sincere as he spoke. This, Yi Chunfeng's heart skipped a beat, but his face revealed a hesitant expression. Brother Yi, you don't have to worry about anything. If you become the head honcho of the Broken Mountain Sword Sect, not only will we not restrict your freedom, but we will also provide you with large amounts of cultivation resources to help you increase your strength. As he spoke, Powentian took out an egg-sized, fiery red crystal that emitted a red glow and placed it on the square table beside Yi Chunfeng. Holy Sword Crystal. Looking at the red crystal on the table, Yi Chunfeng immediately recognized it. It was an extremely precious holy sword crystal formed by a divine-level expert condensing his entire life's doctrine spirit. Although the holy sword crystal was not very useful to him, if the sword domain had the holy sword crystal, there would definitely be the ancestral sword crystal that was extremely important to him. Alright, if the Wentian sect leader gives me 2 more holy sword crystals, I will become the head honcho of the Broken Mountain Sword Sect and represent you in the upcoming Sword Palace battle at the Sky Sword Mountain. Yi Chunfeng seemed to hesitate for a moment before he finally made up his mind. However, I will only stay in the Broken Mountain Sword Sect for 3 years. After that, I will have to leave. Alright, it's a deal then. Although the 3 holy sword crystals made Powentian's heart ache, he felt that it was worth it to recruit an expert who had condensed an ancestral sword soul. He took out 2 more holy sword crystals and gave them to Yi Chunfeng. Great Elder Hua, quickly order people to vacate the Yanjian Peak for Yi Chunfeng. Furthermore, without my orders, no one is to disturb Yi Chunfeng's cultivation. Powentian ordered. Yes, sect leader. Great Elder Hua replied with a smile. He immediately arranged for people to renovate the famous Yanjian Peak of the 100 Swords Peak and gave it to Yi Chunfeng. Master, what do you think of Yi Chunfeng's strength? When Yi Chunfeng followed Great Elder Hua to the Yanjian Peak, a man in a gray robe with snow-white hair and a red face appeared in the Broken Mountain Palace. Powentian immediately went forward and asked in a low voice. This Yi Chunfeng's strength is very terrifying. He should be the same as you and me, a half-martial ancestor expert. However, he has condensed an ancestral sword soul and his attack power is above yours and mine. The Broken Mountain Sword Sect's old sect leader, the half-martial ancestor expert, said in a low voice. Then, Master, do you think this person is reliable? Powentian asked. I can't see it now, but this risk is worth it. If this person is really willing to represent our Broken Mountain Sword Sect to participate in the Sword Palace battle, we will have 3 half-martial ancestor experts. We will definitely have the chance to suppress the 4 great powers and become the Sword Palace. Advancing to the Sword Palace was also the key for the Lawbreaker Sword and Powentian to break through to the Ancestor Realm. In order to become an ancestor expert, they decided to take the risk and bet on Yi Chunfeng. However, Wentian, we have to be careful of Yi Chunfeng. We have to monitor his every move. If we find out that he is doing something wrong, we must eliminate him. The law-breaker sword solemnly instructed. I understand, Master. As long as he doesn't leave our Broken Mountain Sword sect, I can control his life and death with the power of the ancestral land. Powentian nodded. Right, let Yu test him at night and see if he is infatuated with women. If he is interested in Yu, we can give her to him. This way we can better monitor him, the Lawbreaker Sword suggested. Chapter 1874. The night was like a thick ink that covered the night sky. Even the stars in the sky could not be seen. Holy Sword Crystal, this is a good item to refine a sword soul. Yi Chunfeng was living on Yanjian Peak, which had a beautiful scenery and rich immortal energy. He sat cross-legged on top of an ancient pavilion on Yanjian Peak. He took out a holy sword crystal that Powentian had given him and fused it into his ancestral sword soul. After fusing with the holy sword crystal, Yi Chunfeng could clearly feel that his ancestral sword soul had undergone a considerable transformation. The power contained in the sword soul had become purer and its offensive power had increased by quite a bit. Just as he was about to continue refining the holy sword crystal, his keen perception sensed a feminine aura appear on Yanjian Peak and slowly arrive at the ancient pavilion. Exalted Yi, Yu has come under the orders of the sect master to give you some cultivation necessities. Can Yu come in? A gentle and charming voice that could cause one's imagination to run wild rang out under the night sky and entered Yi Chunfeng's ears. Come in. Yi Chunfeng revealed a thought-provoking smile. His body flashed and appeared on the first floor of the ancient pavilion. He opened the tightly shut door and let Yu Fei in. 9 physique. Yi Chunfeng looked at Yu Fei, who was wearing a tight black miniskirt that accentuated her beautiful curves. Her snow-white skin was dazzling under the light as she walked in with her long legs. Yi Chunfeng could smell the rich fragrance coming from her delicate body. However, what Yi Chunfeng liked the most wasn't Yu Fei's foxy appearance or her hot body, but her physique. The 9 physique was a very special physique that had a great nourishing effect on a man's yang physique. Although the 9 physique in Yu Fei's body was not strong and it was clear that she was often taken by others, to ordinary cultivators, it still possessed a fatal allure. Coupled with her charming appearance and the charm emitted from her every movement, it was enough to make ordinary men fall head over heels for her. However, Yi Chunfeng's heart was firm and his heart of martial arts was unshakable. He was not affected in the slightest by Yu Fei's charm. Put down the things and you can leave. Yi Chunfeng glanced at Yu Fei and guessed the reason for her late-night visit. However, Yi Chunfeng was not interested in Yu Fei and her 9 physique. He took a sip of the fragrant tea and coldly said, Consecrator Yi, you don't even have a servant girl to serve you. Why don't you let Yu stay behind to serve you? This way you can also concentrate on your cultivation. Yu Fei walked over to Yi Chunfeng's side, slightly bowed, and filled Yi Chunfeng's cup with spirit tea. As she bowed and poured tea for him, her wide collar hung down deeply, deliberately revealing 2 snow-white soft lumps under Yi Chunfeng's eyelids, revealing her teasing intent. Sure. If you are willing, you can stay here from now on. However, during my cultivation period, you are not allowed to disturb me. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite. After guessing Yi Chunfeng's intentions, Yi Chunfeng did not chase Yu Fei away and decided to let her stay. Don't worry, Exalted Yi. Yu knows what to do. Although Yi Chunfeng's words were cold, Yu Fei did not reveal any anger on her face. Instead, her charming smile became even wider. Exalted Yi, it's getting late. Do you want Yu to help Exalted Yi rest? Yu Fei looked at Yi Chunfeng with watery eyes, her charming voice constantly stirring Yi Chunfeng's heart. I still need to cultivate. You rest by yourself. With a calm expression, Yi Chunfeng drank the wine in his cup and returned to the top floor of the ancient pavilion. He used his mirror image avatar and left behind a mirror image while his true body entered the universe mirror. Humph, sooner or later there will be a day when I will have you prostrate beneath my pomegranate skirt and become my subject. After Yi Chunfeng left, the extremely shrewd Yu Fei finally changed her expression. However, she was filled with confidence in her own looks and charm. She believed that sooner or later she would be able to subdue Yi Chunfeng and have him obediently climb into her bed. Ancestral Sword Soul Fuse. Yu Fei's arrival did not affect Yi Chunfeng in the slightest. He eliminated all distracting thoughts and focused on cultivating in the 30 times faster flow of time. He fused the 2 Saint Sword crystals into his ancestral sword soul, accelerating its transformation and allowing its attack power to reach the peak of a low-grade ancestral artifact. After fusing the Saint Sword crystals, Yi Chunfeng multitasked. He controlled the God-Eater brain to comprehend the ancestral Tao steel while controlling the Grand Mist blood to refine the ancestral Dragon Eye. Very quickly, 3 months passed in the outside world. How is it, Wentian? Is there anything wrong with Yi Chunfeng? Lawbreaker Sword, who was wearing a gray robe and exuding a powerful sword intent, came to Wentian's training room and asked in a low voice. According to Yu's news, Yi Chunfeng has been cultivating in seclusion for the past 3 months. During this time, she hasn't even seen Yi Chunfeng once. Wentian opened his tightly shut eyes and slowly said, I was wondering why Yi Chunfeng could cultivate to this level at such a young age and even refine an ancestral sword soul. So it turns out that he is a cultivation madman. Lawbreaker Sword revealed a faint smile and said, However, this is good news for my mountain-breaking sword sect. We need people like him. That's what I was thinking too. It's best if he keeps cultivating for the next year. That way, we won't have to worry about him, and we'll be able to increase our chances of winning the Ascendant Sword Palace. Wentian nodded. Tell Yu to continue observing Yi Chunfeng. It would be best if we can find an opportunity to coax him into bed. This way we can control him better. Lawbreaker Sword said. Don't worry, Master. I know what to do. Wentian nodded. 5 elements Tao intent, metamorphosis. Heaven and earth Tao intent, metamorphosis. Life and death Tao intent, metamorphosis. Illusion Tao intent, metamorphosis. Heavenly Tao, metamorphosis. Yi Chunfeng had been comprehending the ancestral Tao steel for nearly 15 years in a 30-fold accelerated time flow. He had finally raised his 5 great Tao intents to the ancestral Tao diagram realm. At this time, half a year had passed in the outside world. There were only 8 months left before the Sword Palace contest. Yi Chunfeng's 5 great Tao intents had been raised one after another. Regardless of whether it was the Godless Sword, the Infinite Chaos, or the 3000 Transformation God Fist, the power of all of them had doubled. After cultivating his 5 great Tao intents to the ancestral Tao diagram realm, Yi Chunfeng focused all his energy on refining the ancestral Dragon's Eye. After nearly 15 years of refining with the Hong Meng blood, Yi Chunfeng had refined the ancestral Dragon's Eye onto his forehead. However, the ancestral Dragon's Eye that the Dragon God had given him contained a terrifying amount of power. He was unable to fully grasp the ancestral Dragon's Eye's power at the moment. Sizzle! Under the nourishment of the Hong Meng blood and the refinement of the Origin Flame, the connection between the ancestral Dragon's Eye and Yi Chunfeng grew closer and closer. Finally, after Yi Chunfeng's unremitting efforts, the ancestral Dragon's Eye had completely fused with Yi Chunfeng. Ancestral Dragon's Eye. After fusing with the Eye of the Ancestor Dragon, Yi Chunfeng immediately controlled the Eye of the Ancestor Dragon to attack. When a ferocious vertical eye appeared on his forehead, tens of thousands of rays of light seemed to pierce through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, attacking towards the distance. It directly tore open cracks in the extremely tough fifth level of the universe realm, almost piercing through the universe realm. Not bad, not bad. The offensive strength of this ancestral dragon's eye really didn't disappoint me. It didn't waste my years of refinement. Yi Qinfeng was extremely satisfied with the offensive strength of the ancestral dragon's eye. He felt that if the offensive strength of the ancestral dragon's eye was utilized to the limit, it would be comparable to executing the Tao of equipment control and striking out with the Grim Reaper's scythe. As for the consumption of controlling the ancestral dragon's eye, he didn't care about it at all. Chapter 1875. Yu Fei, what are you doing? After refining the ancestral dragon's eye, Yi Qinfeng came out of seclusion. He dispersed his mirror image and went outside of the ancient pavilion. He saw Yu Fei wearing a thin skirt and comfortably resting in a clear pond on Yanjian Peak. Ah! Hearing Yi Qinfeng's voice, Yu Fei, who had a look of enjoyment on her face, jumped in fright. She hurriedly climbed out of the pool and appeared in front of Yi Qinfeng with her bare, white, and tender feet. While soaking in the pond water, Yu Fei's thin skirt clung tightly to her body, revealing her dazzling hot body and snow-white long legs. With Yi Qinfeng's eyesight, he could even faintly see 2 small grapes on her perky breast. Yi, consecrated Yi, you've come out of seclusion. Although Yu Fei knew that she was wearing a thin skirt and revealing a large portion of her alluring body, she didn't show any signs of bashfulness. She blushed as she looked at Yi Qinfeng and coquettishly said, Put on your clothes and take me to the mountain breaking sword sect. Yi Qinfeng glanced at Yu Fei's hot body and nodded as he said coldly, That's right. Yes, consecrated Yi. Yu Fei nodded and ran into the ancient pavilion with her bare feet. She quickly put on a snow-white floral dress and walked out of the pavilion. Is there anything fun in this 100 Swords Peak? Yi Qinfeng controlled the powerful immortal spirit energy to form a cloud below his feet. He slowly flew out of Yanjian Peak with the coquettish Yu Fei and asked in a low voice. Yes, 100 Swords Peak has 10 great immortal realms and 3 wonders. I'll take consecrated Yi there to take a look. Yu Fei gently leaned on Yi Qinfeng and directed Yi Qinfeng towards the depths of 100 Swords Peak. They arrived at one of the 3 wonders, White Dragon Waterfall. What a powerful ancestral power! On the way to the White Dragon Waterfall, Yi Qinfeng controlled the God-Eater brain to quickly deduce. Through the layers of restrictive spells in the 100 Swords Peak, he could vaguely sense a powerful ancestral power. He had a feeling that if his primitive Tao embryo devoured the ancestral power of the mountain-breaking sword sect, it might be able to break through to the 4-star Tao ancestor level. Consecrator Yi, the White Dragon Waterfall is just ahead. Yu Fei pointed at a waterfall that flowed down from the center of a cliff that was several thousand feet in the distance. It was like a silver dragon. This White Dragon Waterfall is indeed spectacular. Yi Qinfeng looked at the White Dragon Waterfall in the distance and nodded lightly. He controlled the cloud to slowly descend below the White Dragon Waterfall and discovered that many disciples of the mountain-breaking sword sect were practicing their swordsmanship. Oh, isn't this you? Why did you hook up with another pretty boy? When Yi Qinfeng pretended to look up at the waterfall that was like a silver dragon and controlled the God-Eater brain to pinpoint the exact location of the mountain-breaking sword sect's ancestral power, a discordant voice rang out and entered Yi Qinfeng's ears. Following the source of the voice, 2 graceful women in black martial arts suits walked over provocatively. They were far less beautiful than Yu Fei. Yu Fei's face darkened as she revealed Yi Qinfeng's identity and warned them coldly, Shui Fei, Lan Yu, don't talk nonsense. This is the chief consecrator of the mountain-breaking sword sect. If you dare to offend consecrator Yi, our sect master will not spare you. Chief consecrator? Is he worthy? At this time, a man in a dark blue martial arts suit, with a body as straight as a sword and sharp sword chi in his every move, broke through the silver dragon waterfall that was more than 10 feet wide. He stepped on the void and looked at Yi Chunfeng with disdain. Lu, Consecrator Lu. Yu Fei immediately recognized the blue-clothed man as he walked over. Before Yi Chunfeng came to the mountain-breaking sword sect, he was once the head honcho of the mountain-breaking sword sect. His cultivation had reached the peak of the 6-star Tao God realm, and he was only a step away from breaking through to the half-ancestor realm. Consecrator Yi, Consecrator Lu used to be the chief consecrator of the mountain-breaking sword sect. Now that his position has been taken by you, it's inevitable that he will be dissatisfied with you. Yu Fei looked at Consecrator Lu with some apprehension and transmitted her voice to him. Consecrator Lu is the strongest consecrator of the mountain-breaking sword sect. He's not someone that can be replaced. If you know what's good for you, hand over the position of the chief consecrator. Otherwise, you'll suffer. Xue Fei and Lan Yu unexpectedly stuck close to Consecrator Lu like little birds and looked at Yi Chunfeng provocatively. Are you speaking for me? Yi Chunfeng retracted his soul power and looked at Consecrator Lu and the other two coldly. Are you deaf? If we're not speaking for you, are we speaking for a ghost? Xue Fei, who had a voluptuous figure and 2 plump breasts, said angrily. I'm in a good mood today. I don't want to kill anyone. You can leave. Although Consecrator Lu's strength was not ordinary, given Yi Chunfeng's current strength and experience, a 6-star Tao God was no longer worthy of his attention. Thus, the provocation of these 3 small fries could not arouse his anger at all. What arrogance! Do you really think that you're a half-ancestor realm expert and can suppress me? Consecrator Lu's face was gloomy and he said unhappily, Let's go. Let's go to the next scenic spot. Yi Chunfeng ignored the provocation of Consecrator Lu and the other two and was about to leave with the furious Yu Fei. However, Yi Chunfeng's disregard turned into fear and retreat in the eyes of Consecrator Lu and the others. Consecrator Lu revealed a malicious smile and suddenly blocked in front of Yi Chunfeng. You want to leave? It's not that easy. Then what do you want? Yi Chunfeng did not expect Consecrator Lu to be so reckless and provoke him again and again. He revealed a dangerous smile and said, Fight with me. I can only leave if I win. If I lose, I will immediately leave the mountain-breaking sword sect and will never find trouble with you again. Consecrator Lu met Yi Chunfeng's deep gaze and continued to provoke him. There's no need to go through so much trouble. If you lose, you can die. Even a clay figurine would have a temper. Faced with Consecrator Lu's repeated provocations, Yi Chunfeng had a trace of killing intent in his heart. He decided to kill the chicken to warn the monkeys and intimidate the flies. You're courting death. Consecrator Lu's face darkened. Streaks of sword chi gushed out of his body and disrupted the space above his head, causing the air to change. As for Yu Fei and the other two, when they felt the sword chi released by Consecrator Lu, they were so frightened that their faces turned pale. They quickly retreated and did not dare to approach him at all. Cloud Mist Sword Technique. Consecrator Lu instantly deduced the power of Sword Wei to the extreme. He summoned a lower transcendent saint weapon longsword and used his strongest sword move. He transformed into a sharp sea of swords and swept toward Yi Chunfeng with ear-piercing sounds. How dare you challenge me with such strength? Although Consecrator Lu's Cloud Mist Sword Technique was powerful, it was not worth mentioning in Yi Chunfeng's eyes. Yi Chunfeng took a step forward gently. Immediately, the power of heaven and earth was under his control. He gently pointed out with his finger. The terrifying finger sword expanded infinitely and shattered the layers of space before him, destroying Consecrator Lu's Cloud Mist Sword Technique. What? Consecrator Lu's face changed drastically when he saw Yi Chunfeng destroy the Cloud Mist Sword Technique with a single finger. He spat out several mouthfuls of blood essence into the lower transcendent Saint Sword and activated the extremely powerful tool patterns in the Saint Sword. He slashed at the finger sword that was not weakened at all. Ka-cha-cha! When Consecrator Lu's sword slashed at the finger sword that tore through space, he felt like he was hit by a meteor. His body trembled violently, and he almost lost his grip on the sword in his hand. In the next moment, the lower Transcendent Saint's sword in his hand could not withstand the remaining power of Yi Qinfeng's finger sword. It let out a crisp cracking sound and broke into several pieces. Pfff. Consecrator Lu, who could not dodge in time, spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying by Yi Qinfeng's finger. A deep sword hole appeared on his chest. A large amount of blood spurted out uncontrollably and dyed the ground red. Gulp! Xue Fei and Lan Yu were shocked when they saw Yi Qinfeng destroy the Cloud Mist sword technique with a single finger, shattering the lower Transcendent Saint's sword, and sending Consecrator Lu, who was a 6-star Dao god, flying with a single finger. Yu Fei-er's eyes lit up at this moment. Her mind started to work. Consecrator Yi is so powerful. I admit defeat. Consecrator Yi, who was severely injured, was terrified when he saw Yi Qinfeng walking over with his hands behind his back. He had no choice but to lower his noble head and admit defeat in front of everyone. Since you admit defeat, then go and die. Yi Qinfeng was never merciful to his enemies. He raised his right hand gently. Under Consecrator Lu's fearful gaze, he pointed out a second finger. You're not. Before Consecrator Lu could finish his words, an extremely sharp finger light pierced through Consecrator Lu's head, crushed his soul, and killed him on the spot. Let's go. Chapter 1876. Master, Consecrator Lu is dead. He was killed by Yi Qinfeng outside the Silver Dragon waterfall. Knowing that Yi Qinfeng had killed Consecrator Lu, Polaris immediately came to the cave where the Law Vanquishing Sword was cultivating and told him the news. Lu Dehui is dead? The Law Vanquishing Sword opened his murky eyes and revealed a meaningful smile. This Yi Qinfeng did us a favor. Master, is there really something wrong with Lu Dehui? Polaris asked softly as he caught the change in expression on the Law Vanquishing Sword's face. There should be something wrong with this Lu Dehui. Otherwise, I wouldn't have asked you to push Yi Qinfeng to the position of head consecrator. The Law Vanquishing Sword nodded and said in a scheming manner, Master, you predicted that Lu Dehui would cause trouble for Yi Qinfeng and use Yi Qinfeng to get rid of him. Polaris said in admiration. That's right. If we kill Lu Dehui, we will attract a lot of unnecessary trouble. Yi Qinfeng has just joined our Mountain Crushing Sword sect, so no one knows anything about him. If we use him to kill Lu Dehui, it will save us a lot of trouble. The Law Parting Sword nodded. Wentian, find someone to bury Lu Dehui and let Yue continue to observe Yi Qinfeng. If there's anything wrong, inform me immediately. The Law Vanquishing Sword said. Okay, I'll arrange it right away. Polaris nodded. Yi Qinfeng, you're more outstanding than I thought. I hope there's nothing wrong with you. Otherwise, I'll have to destroy you. The Law Vanquishing Sword said coldly. In the evening, the sun was setting in the west and the sunset glow dyed the horizon red. It was so beautiful that it was fascinating. After following Yu Fei around the 100 Swords Peak, Yi Qinfeng had basically confirmed the location of the mountain-breaking sword sect's ancestral vein. However, he wasn't in a hurry to make his move and was prepared to wait for another month. Consecrator Yi, after a day of walking, I think you must be tired. I'll go get you a bath and help you bathe. Yu Fei looked at Yi Qinfeng with watery eyes. Her rosy lips parted slightly as she spoke in a coquettish voice. No need. I don't like to be served by others. You should go and rest. Yi Qinfeng shook his head and refused. Consecrated Yi, do you hate me very much? You don't like Yue serving you. Yu Fei gently bit her lips and said in a lovely voice. No, this has nothing to do with you. It's just that I'm used to being alone. Yi Qinfeng said in a low voice. Oh right, this is for you. Study it when you have time. With that said, Yi Chunfeng gave Yu Fei the Cloud Mist sword art cultivation chant that he had obtained from killing revered priest Lu before turning to leave. I will definitely conquer you. Holding the Cloud Mist sword art in her hands, Yu Fei was even more determined to conquer Yi Chunfeng. She had a feeling that if she could conquer Yi Chunfeng, her fate would undergo a qualitative change. After returning to the top of the ancient pavilion, Yi Chunfeng briefly inspected revered priest Lu's belongings. He didn't find anything of value, so he left his mirror image outside and entered the universe realm to continue cultivating. Soon, more than a month had passed in the outside world. When there was still half a year before the battle for the Sword Palace, Yi Chunfeng decided to take action and infiltrate the ancestral vein of the mountain-breaking sword sect. Before taking action, Yi Chunfeng had his mirror image enter Yu Fei's room to confuse the spies that Powentian had placed by his side. "Ah, Consecrator Yi, why have you come?" Yu Fei, who was wearing a white chiffon skirt and had a curvaceous figure, exuded a fatal temptation. When she saw Yi Chunfeng, who had been cultivating in seclusion, suddenly appear in her room in the evening, she was immediately overjoyed and welcomed Yi Chunfeng in. "I came to ask you if there is anything you don't understand about cultivating the Cloud Mist sword art? If there is, I can help you answer it." The mirror image looked at Yu Fei, who was wearing revealing clothes and had half her face covered to seduce others, and said indifferently, There is. Yu Fei was born slow-witted, so comprehending the Cloud Mist sword art is indeed quite difficult. There are many things that I don't understand. Yu Fei nodded her head lightly and said, "Consecrator Yi, why don't we talk on the bed?" "Okay." The mirror image nodded and followed Yu Fei to the large bed that exuded a mesmerizing fragrance. At the same time, Yi Chunfeng's true body controlled the universe realm to cross the Yanjian Peak and arrived outside the ancestral land that was enveloped by a powerful restriction. Space Swallower, break the restriction. Yi Chunfeng controlled his powerful soul power to cover the surroundings. When he found that there was no one within a radius of several miles, he summoned the Space Swallower and ordered it to quickly devour the restriction outside the ancestral land. He opened a gap and entered inside. After entering the ancestral land of the mountain-breaking sword sect, Yi Chunfeng felt that the ancestral land of the mountain-breaking sword sect contained a powerful ancestral aura. He also felt a powerful soul aura in the ancestral land. This soul aura was so strong that it had reached the level of a 4-star Dao ancestor. I didn't expect the mountain-breaking sword sect to have such a trump card. A 4-star Dao ancestor could definitely sweep across the entire sword domain. However, in front of Yi Chunfeng, it was not enough. He controlled the universe realm to quietly approach this powerful soul. He was prepared to deal with it first to avoid alerting the enemy. Who is it? When Yi Chunfeng controlled the universe realm to slowly approach it, the soul that had lived in an ancient tree for countless years sensed that something was wrong. A powerful soul fluctuation filled the space and locked onto the universe realm. At that moment, 3 ancient ancestor flags appeared in the universe realm. They quickly waved and formed a large number of ancient runes that instantly sealed the entire space. In the next instant, Yi Chunfeng, Fa Tianzu, and the primitive Dao fetus appeared in the sealed space. Peak Ancestor Realm Almighty. Sensing the vast ancestor chi from Fa Tianzu, the mysterious soul exclaimed in shock, and a strong sense of unease rose in his heart. End this quickly. Suppress him with all your might. Yi Chunfeng ordered. Fa Tianzu used his earth-shattering ancestral aura to attack the mysterious soul. Ancient Sword Tree attack. Sensing the danger brought by Fa Tianzu, the mysterious soul did not dare to let him get close to it. He controlled the ancient tree that was as sharp as a sword to shake violently. It formed many powerful sword shadows and attacked Fa Tianzu. Primal Chaos Divine Wood, suppress. When Fa Tianzu waved his hand to break the ancient sword tree's attack, Yi Chunfeng summoned the primal chaos divine wood and controlled it to fly above the ancient sword tree. It extended a large number of 5-colored roots that pierced into the ancient sword tree's extremely tough body. It suppressed the ancient sword tree and forced out the mysterious soul that was hiding in the tree. Who are you? What do you want to do in my mountain-breaking sword sex ancestral land? The mysterious soul looked at Yi Chunfeng with fear and asked Fa Tianzu. You're just a soul. You don't need to know so much. With that, Yi Chunfeng burned his primordial blood and opened the ancestral dragon's eye on his forehead. Rays of invincible light shot out and attacked the mysterious soul. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. In an instant, the mysterious soul's body was pierced by the ancestral dragon's eye and was severely injured. Next, Fa Tianzu unleashed an invincible palm. The terrifying palm light directly exploded the mysterious soul of the 4-star Tao ancestor. God-Eater Brain, devour! After the mysterious soul was destroyed, Yi Chunfeng immediately summoned the God-Eater Brain. He controlled the God-Eater Brain to quickly move and release a powerful devouring power to devour the mysterious soul. In the blink of an eye, the severely injured mysterious soul was devoured by the God-Eater Brain and became its nourishment. Primitive Tao Fetus, devour the broken sword ancestral vein. Chapter 1877. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The primitive Tao embryo, which was a 3-star Tao ancestor, had an extremely strong devouring ability. Under its frenzied devouring, the power of the mountain-breaking sword sex ancestral vein was rapidly drained away. At the same time, the primitive Tao embryo's strength was increasing rapidly. Why is the ancestral vein's power suddenly draining away? Powentian, who was rolling around on the bed with a pretty female disciple, suddenly felt the ancestral vein's power being drained away. He sat up on the bed with a shocked expression. Sect Master, what's wrong? A voluptuous girl with a soft body hugged Powentian's body and asked coquettishly. Get away from me! Sensing the ancestral vein's power being drained away, Powentian realized the severity of the situation. He directly sent the girl flying, put on his clothes, and rushed to the ancestral vein of the mountain-breaking sword sect. Powentian wasn't the only one who sensed the loss of the ancestral vein's power. Lawbreaker, Elder Hua, and the others also sensed it and surrounded the entire ancestral vein. Not good, Lord Sword Spirit's aura has disappeared. When Lawbreaker, Powentian, and the others arrived at the ancestral vein, they realized that the Sword Spirit who had guarded the ancestral vein for countless years had disappeared. Their faces darkened instantly. Who did this? The Sword Spirit was the guardian of the mountain-breaking sword sect. His death had a huge impact on the mountain-breaking sword sect. Lawbreaker roared furiously. At this moment, Powentian thought of Yi Chunfeng and immediately took out his communication pearl to contact Yu Fei. At this moment, the red-faced Yu Fei was using this excellent opportunity to seduce Yi Chunfeng's mirror image clone. Wentian, is Yi Chunfeng at Yanjian Peak? Lawbreaker asked after calming down. I just contacted Yu Yi Chunfeng is with her and hasn't left Yanjian Peak. Powentian replied. Then who did this? Lawbreaker's brows were tightly knitted together as he released his powerful soul power to cover the entire ancestral vein, searching for suspicious targets. Yes, there's someone in the ancestral vein. When the powerful soul of the magic-breaking sword penetrated into the ground and found the primitive fetus of Taoism, it was furious. It summoned the treasure of the mountain-breaking sword sect, a golden sword that was an upper-grade transcendent divine weapon. It cut open the tough ground of the ancestral land and attacked the primitive fetus of Taoism. As Ji Hao's power increased, the body of the primitive embryo of Tao became tougher and tougher. Therefore, the golden sword couldn't hurt it at all. He relied on his indestructible body to withstand the attacks of the golden swords. He continued to open all of the acupoints in his body, furiously devouring the power of the ancestral bloodline. He slowly accumulated enough energy to break through to the 4-star Tao ancestor level. What are you all standing there for? Attack together with me! The law-breaking sword sect brought his power to the peak. He attacked with his golden sword for half an hour and realized that he could not harm the primitive embryo at all. He immediately ordered everyone from the mountain-breaking sword sect to attack together. He wanted to destroy the primitive embryo and protect the ancestral bloodline. Boom, boom, boom. Under the combined attacks of the mountain-breaking sword sect, the entire ancestral bloodline shook violently. Huge cracks spread in all directions, and the entire 100 Swords peak fell into chaos. The combined attacks of the law-breaking sword, Wentian, and the others were powerful, but they still couldn't hurt the primitive embryo of Taoism. Slowly, the power of the ancestral bloodline of the mountain-breaking sword sect became weaker and weaker. In the end, it was completely devoured by the primitive embryo of Taoism. After devouring the ancestral bloodline of the mountain-breaking sword sect, the primitive embryo of Taoism had accumulated enough energy to break through the shackles of its cultivation level and become a 4-star Tao ancestor. Primitive embryo of Taoism, let's leave this place. Yi Chunfeng still had to rely on the mountain-breaking sword sect to participate in the upcoming battle for the Sword Palace and come into contact with the upper echelons of the sword domain. Therefore, he did not let the primitive embryo of Tao go on a killing spree. Instead, he let Yi Chunfeng take the universe realm and fly out of the mountain-breaking sword sect at an extreme speed. The sword soul was killed and the ancestral bloodline was devoured. The law-breaking sword and Wentian were in a frenzy. They roared furiously and attacked with the 2 treasures of the mountain-breaking sword sect, ignoring the terrifying power of the primitive embryo of Taoism. However, their attacks were like tickles to the primitive embryo of Taoism. They couldn't hurt it at all. Wentian, leave this guy to me. Quickly activate the sect-protecting formation and seal off the entire mountain-breaking sword sect. Don't let him escape. The law-breaking sword ordered loudly. Yes, master. Wentian nodded and summoned a powerful formation plate. He activated the sect-protecting formation and formed a powerful seal. It sealed off the entire 100 Swords peak and sealed off the escape route of the primitive embryo of Taoism. Primitive embryo of Taoism, kill. After the 100 Swords peak was sealed, Yi Chunfeng immediately ordered the primitive embryo of Taoism through the universe mirror. After receiving the order, the primitive embryo of Taoism gave up on escaping. It suddenly turned around and punched at the law-breaking sword who was chasing after it. With that punch, heaven and earth changed. The terrifying fist radiance shattered the entire space. With a suffocating power, it shattered the golden sword radiance that the law-breaking sword had slashed down and went straight for the sword's chest. Although the law-breaking sword dodged the punch with his speed, the force of the punch was too great. When it hit the void, the rebound force caused the law-breaking sword's blood to boil. It was very uncomfortable. Why are you doing this? What grudge do you have with the mountain-breaking sword sect? Why did you kill our guardian soul and destroy our ancestral bloodline? After experiencing the power of the punch, the law-breaking sword suppressed the boiling blood in his body and hid far away. He questioned in a low voice. If you don't want to die, open the formation obediently and let me leave. Otherwise, I don't mind slaughtering the entire mountain-breaking sword sect. The primitive embryo of Taoism opened its mouth and warned in a hoarse voice. Hearing the primitive embryo of Taoism's warning, the law-breaking sword was furious. However, he was indeed a little worried about the primitive embryo of Taoism. I'll count to 3. If you don't start the battle, don't blame me for killing. The primitive embryo of Taoism said with murderous intent. Master, what should we do? Losing the sword spirit and the ancestral bloodline was equivalent to cutting off the arms of the mountain-breaking sword master. Facing the invincible and extraordinarily powerful primitive embryo of Tao, Wentian was at a loss. He had no choice but to send a message to the law-breaking sword. What should we do? The law-breaking sword was also troubled. 1, 2, 3, since you don't know what's good for you, let me send you to hell. Just then, while the law-breaking sword and the others were hesitating, the primitive embryo of Taoism counted to 3. Then, like an invincible god of war, he attacked the strongest sword of the mountain-breaking sword sect, carrying a suffocating amount of ancestral power. Wait! The primitive embryo of Taoism attacked with murderous intent. The law-breaking sword was scared. However, the primitive embryo of Taoism didn't care about him at all. It kept punching out fist radiance that shattered the golden sword radiance and attacked his body. Pfft! Borrowing the power of the golden sword, the law-breaking sword blocked the 3 space-shattering fist lights launched by the primitive embryo of Tao with brute force, but the sword couldn't take it anymore. The golden sword of the mountain-breaking sword sect was cracked by the primitive embryo of Taoism's powerful fist. Go to hell! The primitive embryo of Taoism suddenly moved. Under the horrified gaze of the law-breaking sword, it suddenly closed in and tore his attack apart. It grabbed his body. Ah! The law-breaking sword let out a painful cry. His entire body was torn in half by the primitive embryo of Taoism. His soul was also destroyed by the ancestral light that the primitive embryo of Taoism spat out. Chapter 1878. Do you still want to stop me? After tearing apart the body of the half-ancestor level sword, the primitive embryo of Tao looked at Wentian and the others, who were trembling in fear. No, we don't dare. Wentian was scared out of his wits by the primitive embryo of Tao's strength. Under the primitive embryo of Tao's cold gaze, he obediently opened the sect's protective formation and allowed the primitive embryo of Tao to leave. Sect Master, what should we do? Great Elder Hua looked at the body of the law-breaking sword in a pool of blood, and his mind was in a mess. Seal off all news. If anyone dares to spread what happened today, I'll kill them. Wentian ordered with a dark expression. He really couldn't understand why such a thing would happen to the mountain-breaking sword sect at such a critical moment. Not only was the guardian sword spirit killed, the ancestral vein was broken, and the law-breaking sword was also killed. Could that person be Lu Dehui's accomplice? A thought flashed through Wentian's mind. However, he quickly dismissed this thought. If that person was Lu Dehui's accomplice, he wouldn't have killed the law-breaking sword, but Yi Chunfeng instead. Could this be just an accident? Or is there someone who doesn't want our mountain-breaking sword sect to enter the Sword Palace? Wentian felt like his mind was in a mess. At this moment, Yi Chunfeng put the primitive embryo of Tao back into the universe realm and met up with his mirror image clone in the forest of the 100 Swords Peak. Wentian Sect Master, what happened? Yi Chunfeng looked at Wentian, whose eyebrows were tightly knitted together. His expression was so dark that it looked like water was about to drip from it. Sigh, Honored Elder Yi, our mountain-breaking sword sect is finished. Wentian took a deep look at Yi Chunfeng, but didn't see a trace of doubt on his face. He sighed, then simply explained what had happened. Looks like there's someone who doesn't want your mountain-breaking sword sect to win the Sword Palace competition. Yi Chunfeng said in a low voice. Honored Elder Yi, you mean that the mastermind behind this is the heaven-shaking sword sect? Wentian's frown became even tighter. Actually, this matter is not difficult to analyze. Yi Chunfeng slowly said, Sect Master Wentian, you just said that when that person destroyed your mountain-breaking sword sect's ancestral vein and killed the guardian soul, he didn't start a massacre. Instead, he wanted to leave quickly. It was you who blocked his path of retreat and killed the old sect master. That's right. Wentian nodded. From this, it can be seen that even though that person is strong, he has his reservations. What he is worried about is not the overall strength of the mountain-breaking sword sect, but the ancestral rules of the sword region. If he starts a massacre, It will definitely alert the 3 sword palaces and even the sword god hall. When that happens, it's very likely that something unexpected will happen. That's why he's only destroying the foundation of your mountain-crushing sword sect. That way, even if your mountain-crushing sword sect becomes a sword palace, you won't be a threat to them in the short term. Yi Chunfeng said patiently. These hypocrites. Powentian was already at a loss of what to do. Now that he heard Yi Chunfeng's analysis, he felt that it made sense. He gritted his teeth and said, Sir Yi, what do you think we should do now? With the death of Lawbreaker, Yi Chunfeng's importance to the mountain-crushing sword sect had become even more important. He asked. Their most basic plan is to prevent the mountain-crushing sword sect from becoming a sword palace. If we become a sword palace, we can destroy their plan. If we become a sword palace, we can borrow a large amount of resources to rebuild the mountain-crushing sword sect. As for the ancestral vein, we can slowly make up for it. Yi Chunfeng changed the topic and continued to guide Powentian. As for who the mastermind is, I think we'll be able to find out during the battle for the Sword Palace. Sigh, with the death of Master, the chances of our mountain-crushing sword sect becoming a sword palace are very slim. Moreover, they have such a terrifying expert holding the fort. Powentian sighed helplessly. He felt a deep sense of helplessness. Wentian sect leader, if you trust me, leave everything to me. I'll do my best to help your mountain-crushing sword sect become a sword palace, Yi Chunfeng said as he looked at the powerless Powentian. Sir Yi, I appreciate your good intentions. However, the person who came to cause trouble is too terrifying. I suspect that he's a 2-star or even a 3-star Dao ancestor. Powentian shook his head and said helplessly. Wentian sect leader, I refined the sacred sword crystal you gave me some time ago. My ancestral sword spirit has been greatly tempered. If you can give me a few more crystals, in addition to the secret technique that Master passed on to me, I might be able to defeat a 3-star Dao ancestor. Yi Chunfeng felt that the sacred sword crystal was extremely beneficial for tempering an ancestral sword spirit. He was prepared to get a few more crystals to increase the power of his ancestral sword spirit. Really? Powentian's eyes lit up. That depends on whether Wentian sect leader is willing to bet on me, Yi Chunfeng said with a faint smile. Alright, I'll give you 3 more sacred sword crystals. Even if my mountain-crushing sword sect fails in the end, I'll make those bastards pay a painful price. Powentian gritted his teeth and reluctantly took out 3 more sacred sword crystals and gave them to Yi Chunfeng. Don't worry, I'll avenge the mountain-crushing sword sect for you. Obtaining these 3 sacred sword crystals was enough for his ancestral sword spirit to undergo a transformation and increase its power to the level of a middle-grade ancestral artifact. Because of the huge change in the mountain-crushing sword sect, Powentian directly sealed off the 100 Swords Peak and used bloody methods to reorganize the mountain-crushing sword sect, killing all suspicious people. After obtaining the 3 sacred sword crystals, Yi Chunfeng ignored Yu Fair's enticement and began to cultivate in seclusion. He refined the 3 sacred sword crystals into his ancestral sword spirit and increased its power to the level of a middle-grade ancestral artifact. When Yi Chunfeng was tempering his ancestral sword spirit, he swallowed the sword spirit of a 4-star Dao ancestor. The god-devouring brain slowly evolved and gave birth to an extremely powerful child brain. Through sensing, Yi Chunfeng felt that this child brain could easily control the soul consciousness of a peak ancestral realm expert. Days passed, and the battle for the Sword Palace was getting closer and closer. In order to avoid Yu Fair's harassment, Yi Chunfeng had been hiding in the Cosmos realm to cultivate and break through to the 2-star Dao Ancestor realm. However, after cultivating for several years in a 30-fold time flow, Yi Chunfeng did not make a breakthrough. After refining 2 Chaos Divine fruits in succession, the Chaos Divine beast in his body had increased by more than 10 times. However, he made a breakthrough and reached the 2-star Dao Ancestor realm. Just as Yi Chunfeng was completely immersed in cultivation, the remnant soul he left outside sensed Pawentian's aura appear in the Yanjian peak. Guessing that they were about to enter, he left the cosmos realm and went outside. Honored Yi, there are less than 10 days before the battle for the Sword Palace. Let's go to the Sky Sword Mountain. Pawentian, who looked slightly haggard, said. Okay. Chapter 1879. The Sky Sword Mountain was the second highest peak in the Sword Domain. Its height was second only to the Divine Sword Peak where the Heavenly Sword Hall was located. It was like an invincible divine sword that was inserted in the northeast of the Sword Domain. As the Sky Sword Mountain was too tall, the mountainside was already in the clouds. The peak of the Sky Sword Mountain was covered in snow all year round. Without a certain level of strength, it was impossible to reach the peak. We're here. The peak in front is the Sky Sword Mountain. Pawentian pointed to the Sky Sword Mountain in front of them. Most of the peak was in the clouds, making it impossible to see the peak clearly. What a powerful sword intent! Seeing the Sky Sword Mountain getting closer and closer, Yi Chunfeng felt a powerful sword intent from the Sky Sword Mountain. He had a feeling that if the sword intent of the Sky Sword Mountain was fully released, it would probably be able to kill several Ancestor Realm Almighties in an instant. Let's go. The Sky Sword Mountain is the sacred mountain of the Sword Domain. In order to show our respect to the sacred mountain, everyone must climb from the foot of the mountain. Pawentian stopped the warship at the foot of the Heavenly Assassin's sword and led Yi Chunfeng and the rest along an ancient stone path to the peak. At that moment, another huge warship appeared. Looking at the flag hanging high on the warship, Pawentian recognized that it was the Hunyuan Sword Sect's warship. The Hunyuan Sword Sect's overall strength was originally on par with the Mountain Breaking Sword Sect. However, after the Lawbreaker Sword was killed by the primitive embryo of Tao, the Mountain Breaking Sword Sect's strength was no longer comparable to the Hunyuan Sword Sect's. Yo, isn't this the sect master of Wentian seeking? You're early. A sarcastic voice suddenly sounded from the warship. The Hunyuan Sword Sect Master, who was dressed in a black robe and had a divine sword on his back, led more than 10 Hunyuan Sword Sect experts and leaped off the warship. Sect Master Wentian seeking, why are you the only one leading the team? Where's the Lawbreaker Sword Sect Master? Why isn't he here? Just as Pawentian was about to ignore the Hunyuan Sect Master and lead Yi Chunfeng and the rest away, the Hunyuan Sword Sect Master continued speaking. Hearing the Hunyuan Sect Master mention the Lawbreaker Sword Sect Master, Pawentian's eyelids twitched. He knew that the Hunyuan Sect Master must have known about the Lawbreaker Sword Sect Master's death and was deliberately humiliating him. Primordial Chaos Sect Master, don't you know that the Law-Breaking Sword is already dead? Pawentian forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart. Just as he was about to leave, a deep voice resounded in the Sky Sword Mountain. Tantai Fa. Hearing this voice, Pawentian immediately recognized that this voice belonged to his old rival, the Tantai clan's patriarch, Tantai Fa. Heaven-seeking sect leader, ignore them. Seeing Pawentian's ashen face and veins bulging on his forehead, Yi Chunfeng patted his shoulder gently and said, Dogs bite people, but people cannot bite dogs. Furthermore, dogs that bite people will not bark randomly. Haha, Consecrator Yi Chunfeng is right, they are just a bunch of wild dogs. Hearing Yi Chunfeng's sharp counterattack, Breaking Sky laughed loudly. Yes. The Hunyuan Sect Master didn't expect Yi Chunfeng to be so bold as to call him a dog in public. His face darkened as he looked at Yi Chunfeng, his eyes filled with killing intent. Pawentian, your master has been killed. Your mountain-breaking sword sect is no longer qualified to fight for the Sword Palace. If you know what's good for you, scram as far as you can. Don't embarrass yourself. The Hunyuan Sect Master warned with an unfriendly expression. You don't need to worry about whether my mountain-breaking sword sect is qualified or not. Pawentian coldly snorted and said, You should think more about the Hunyuan sword sect. Let's go. With that, Powentian no longer paid attention to the Hunyuan sect master and the others. He led Yi Chunfeng and the others up the mottled stone steps, step by step, towards the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain. Powentian, you better pray that you don't run into my Hunyuan sword sect. Otherwise, I will make you pay with your blood. The Hunyuan sect master glared viciously at Yi Chunfeng and Powentian's backs as he gritted his teeth and swore to himself. Consecrator Yi, do you think the Hunyuan sword sect and Tantai clan are behind this? Powentian clenched his fists and asked coldly. I can't tell right now, but the mountain-breaking sword sect has been sealed. The news of the old sect master's death still spread, which means there are still spies in the mountain-breaking sword sect. Yi Chunfeng walked at an even pace as he replied. On the way up, he controlled the God-Eater brain to quickly deduce. He silently comprehended the sword intent in the Sky Sword Mountain and deepened his understanding of the way of the sword. I didn't expect that there would still be traitors in the mountain-breaking sword sect after I massacred them, Powentian said with an ugly expression. It seems that the various major powers have long been plotting against my mountain-breaking sword sect. The Sky Sword Mountain was tens of thousands of meters high, and the mountain roads were built around it. It would take a very long time to reach the peak. As the distance increased, Yi Chunfeng felt a powerful sword intent gushing down through the layers of clouds. With his strength and status, he was unable to reach the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain under the pressure of such a terrifying sword intent. Swish, swish, swish. As they walked, an ear-piercing sound suddenly entered the ears of Yi Chunfeng and the others. Following the source of the sound, they saw a man dressed in a long white robe. His entire body was like an unsheathed sword, and he gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. He stepped on the steep mountain walls and rushed towards the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain at an extremely fast speed. Zhentian Xing, the #1 genius of the Zhentian sword sect. I didn't expect him to have broken through to the one-star Dao ancestor realm. Feeling the powerful sword intent emanating from the white-robed man's body, Powentian's face changed slightly, revealing a trace of solemnity. Yi Chunfeng glanced at Zhentian Xing and lost interest in him. Although Zhentian Xing, who had broken through to the one-star Dao ancestor realm in less than 5,000 years of cultivation, was amazing enough, and his strength was enough to suppress the entire mountain-breaking sword sect, he was nothing in front of Yi Chunfeng. With Yi Chunfeng's current strength, he could kill him with just one punch. The Zhentian sword sect should be our biggest enemy, Great Elder Hua said in a low voice. He's just a one-star Dao ancestor. There's no need to fear him. Let's continue climbing, Yi Chunfeng said casually. He continued to walk at an even pace along the winding mountain road towards the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain. Not long after, Yi Chunfeng and the others felt a powerful aura appear again. Through the slowly drifting sea of clouds, Yi Chunfeng and the others could vaguely see a graceful figure emitting 5-colored light shuttling through the sea of clouds at high speed. Qian Bingzi, the princess of the Qian family. I didn't expect her to have broken through to the one-star Dao ancestor realm. Watching the figure disappear in front of him, Powentian was shocked. He never thought that so many juniors would surpass him in realm. Can he really turn the tide? Powentian glanced at Yi Chunfeng, who was calm and unaffected, and placed all his hopes on him. Thump, thump, thump. After several hours of rapid climbing, Yi Chunfeng and the others gradually approached the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain, where the temperature was constantly dropping and large snowflakes were drifting down. Suddenly, they felt that the snow-covered mountain was slightly shaking. An abnormally strong man dressed in animal skin, revealing his red muscles. His long black hair casually draped over his shoulders, giving off an unrestrained feeling. He was stepping on the hard mountain walls of the Sky Sword Mountain, leaving many footprints. Tantai Xiong. How can it be him? Isn't he dead? Looking at the man in animal skin, Powentian's eyes widened. He was so shocked that it was as if he had seen a ghost. Hearing Pawentian's exclamation, Tantai Xiong's gloomy eyes shone brightly. He glanced at the stunned Pawentian and revealed a mouthful of white teeth. What a clown! After saying that, Tantai Xiong ignored Pawentian and the others. Like a violent bear, he continued to step on the mountain walls and arrived at the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain. Yi Chunfeng glanced at Tantai Xiong, who had restrained his aura, and said indifferently, Wentian sect master, why do the other families have progenitor experts but not your mountain-breaking sword sect? Sigh, bad luck, bad luck. Pawentian sighed softly and didn't say much. However, from his expression, he could tell that there was a story about the mountain-breaking sword sect. Chapter 1880. Reaching the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain, Pawentian could see from afar that there was a simple and crude stone palace covered in white snow. Inside the stone palace, there were more than a dozen experts with terrifying auras and suffocating sword auras. The experts from the heaven-shaking sword sect, the Tantai clan, and the Qian clan, who had arrived early, were all waiting outside the stone palace. No one dared to enter the stone palace to drink tea. However, on their faces, there was no trace of unhappiness. Instead, there was deep respect. Qijua Sword Palace. Looking at the dozen men and women in long robes who were slowly sipping tea, Pawentian immediately recognized them. They were the experts from the Qijua Sword Palace, the head of the 3 palaces in the Sword region. The white-haired elder leading them was the great elder of the Qijua Sword Palace. He had cultivated the Qijua Sword technique to the Great Completion realm and was at the peak of the 4-star Dao Ancestor realm. He was known for his fiery temper, Zhu Yanlong. Come, follow me to greet Great Elder Zhu. Pawentian showed a respectful expression and immediately led Yi Chunfeng and the others to the stone palace. He respectfully knelt on the ground and said, Wentian brings the disciples of the mountain-breaking sword sect to greet Great Elder Zhu and the seniors of the Qijua Sword Palace. Pawentian, I find that your mountain-breaking sword sect is getting bolder and bolder. There is actually someone who is not kneeling when greeting Great Elder Zhu. The Tantai clan master, who did not have a good relationship with the mountain-breaking sword sect, was wearing a black robe and had a black beard around his mouth. He was at the half-martial ancestor realm. He deliberately provoked Yi Chunfeng, who was standing there silently with a calm expression. Pawentian raised his head and looked at Yi Chunfeng, who was standing alone. He was so frightened that his expression changed. He quickly said, Honored Yi, what are you doing? Quickly kneel with me and greet Great Elder Zhu. Yi Chunfeng glanced at Tantai Fa and said indifferently, I don't have the habit of kneeling to others. Pawentian, who is he? The hot-tempered Zhu Yanlong put down the teacup in his hand and looked at the proud Yi Chunfeng. His expression gradually darkened as he asked in a low voice. Beads of sweat appeared on Pawentian's forehead as he tried to calm himself down and explained, Grand Elder, Yi Qingyu is a guest elder that our mountain-breaking sword sect just recently recruited. Humph, Pawentian, you need to keep your eyes open when you're recruiting guests in the future. Recruiting people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth will bring disaster to your mountain-breaking sword sect. Zhu Yanlong snorted and lectured him in a superior tone. Yes, Patian will remember Great Elder's lesson. Pawentian nodded and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. He had the urge to break off relations with Yi Chunfeng. Yi Chunfeng could hear the unfriendliness in Zhu Yanlong's tone, but he did not show any signs of panic. It was as if even if the sky fell, it would not make him change his expression. He stood in silence. Howl. Just when the atmosphere was a little strange, a high-pitched wolf howl suddenly sounded from the peak of Sky Sword Mountain. It shattered the snowflakes falling from the sky and startled Zhu Yanlong and the others. Bronze Sword Envoy is here. Zhu Yanlong and the other experts of the Qijua Sword Palace stood up one after another and went to the stone hall to greet him. Pawentian and the others who were still kneeling on the ground were completely ignored by them. 4-star Dao Ancestor. Yi Chunfeng's pupils shrank. He found that the man riding the demon wolf was a 4-star Dao ancestor. His strength was above Zhu Yanlong's. His mount, the blood wolf, was also extraordinary. It had reached the 3-star demon ancestor realm and was strong enough to defeat the 4 major sword sections. However, he had comprehended the 5 ancestor-level Dao diagrams and condensed the eye of the ancestor dragon. He was fully capable of killing a 4-star Dao ancestor. Bronze Sword Envoy's arrival did not disrupt his plan. Grand Elder Zhu, everyone, we meet again. Bronze Sword Envoy's bearded face showed a somewhat old-fashioned smile as he spoke in a slightly hoarse voice. Yes, 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. I am older, but Bronze Sword Envoy is only a step away from becoming a 4-star Dao ancestor. Although Zhu Yanlong was the Grand Elder of 7 Sword Palace and had a high status, he did not dare to act rashly in front of Bronze Sword Envoy. Haha, Grand Elder Zhu, you must be joking. I think you are old but vigorous. You may not become a 4-star Dao ancestor later than me. Bronze Sword Envoy had a good relationship with Zhu Yanlong. When he spoke, he showed a rare smile. Yi Chunfeng, don't be reckless later. Neither Bronze Sword Envoy nor 7 Sword Palace are people that our mountain-breaking sword sect can offend. Powentian called Yi Chunfeng aside and warned him seriously as he looked at Zhu Yanlong, Bronze Sword Envoy, and the others, who were exchanging pleasantries. Reckless? Yi Chunfeng smiled faintly and said, even if Sword God was here, I would not kneel because they are not worthy. Yi Chunfeng, do you want to die? Stop talking nonsense. You will get our mountain-breaking sword sect killed. Yi Chunfeng's words scared Powentian and the others out of their wits. Powentian wished he could seal Yi Chunfeng's big mouth to prevent the mountain-breaking sword sect from being implicated by him. Ha ha! At this moment, a contemptuous laugh sounded. If Sword God was here, you would not kneel? Qianbingzi, who was wearing a robe and exuding a cold aura, was tall and slender. She was only a little shorter than Yi Chunfeng. When she heard Yi Chunfeng's words, she walked over slowly with a cold smile on her beautiful face. I will not kneel. Yi Chunfeng glanced at Qianbingzi's beautiful face and slender figure and said coldly, arrogant and conceited guy, you're only here to show off. However, with your strength and status, I'm afraid you won't be able to see Lord Sword God in your entire life. Qianbingzi rolled her eyes at Yi Chunfeng, not believing his words. No, I will see him very soon. Yi Chunfeng shook his head and said seriously, Heaven-seeking sect master, if your mountain-shattering sword sect doesn't want to be annihilated, then you should chase this lunatic away as soon as possible. Otherwise, he will really bring disaster to your mountain-shattering sword sect. The Qian family had a good relationship with the mountain-breaking sword sect. Qianbingzi warned him coldly and turned to leave. Yi Chunfeng, Ancestor Yi, I'm afraid of you. Can't you just keep your mouth shut? My mountain-breaking sword sect really can't bear the consequences. Powentian was truly scared and begged. You're scared. Yi Chunfeng smiled and didn't continue speaking. If Powentian knew that Yi Chunfeng had changed his mind and was preparing to start a massacre in the Sword Palace competition, he would probably go crazy from fear. More people are coming. Just as Yi Chunfeng was standing in the snow in silence, waiting for the Sword Palace ranking competition to start, his powerful soul power suddenly felt 4 powerful auras appear at the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain, causing him to frown slightly. Very soon, the experts of the various superpowers also felt the 4 powerful auras and looked at the mountain path. Through the heavy snow, they saw 2 men and 2 women with swords on their back. They wore the same white martial arts robes and walked on the snow without leaving a trace. Who are they? Chapter 1881. The people from the mysterious sword cave heaven are here. Seeing the 4 people walking in the snow, Bronze Sword Envoy, Zhu Yanlong, and the others, who were drinking tea in the stone hall, stood up and walked out to greet them. Mysterious sword cave heaven? What kind of power is this? Why have I never heard of it? But they are definitely not simple, since Bronze Sword Envoy and Great Elder Ju have come to greet them. Seeing Bronze Sword Envoy and the others walk out of the stone hall to greet them, the experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans felt that they were not simple. Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven, could it be? A thought flashed through Yi Chenfeng's mind. Everyone, let me introduce them to you. Bronze Sword Envoy nodded to the 4 people and said in a hoarse voice, "These 4 are from the Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven. Like you, they are here to participate in the Sword Palace contest." What? Hearing this, the 3 sects and 2 clans were in an uproar. The 5 sect masters felt that something was wrong. So the Sword Palace contest is held for them. Yi Chenfeng smiled faintly and confirmed his guess. The Sword Realm suddenly held the Sword Palace contest, not for the benefit of the 3 sects and 2 clans, but for the Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven. The Sword Palace contest was just a formality. Bronze Sword Envoy, Great Elder, didn't you say that only the 3 sects and 2 clans are qualified to participate in the Sword Palace contest? Hunyuan Sect Master also found the key to the problem and said unwillingly. The Mysterious Sword Emperor approved the Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven. If you have any questions, you can ask him. Bronze Sword Envoy said coldly. The smile on his face disappeared. Mysterious Sword Emperor, Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven. The Mysterious Sword Emperor was as famous as the Sky Sword Emperor. He was second only to the Sword God in the Heavenly Sword Hall. His swordsmanship was superb, and his strength had reached the 6-star Tao Ancestor realm. He was second only to one person. At this moment, the experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans were disappointed. All their hopes and ambitions were gone at this moment. At this moment, they felt like they were reading books with the Crown Prince. They had completely become his background. Maybe Master's death has something to do with this mysterious sword wonderland, Powentian murmured in his heart. However, he could vaguely guess the relationship between the Mysterious Sword Paradise and the Mysterious Sword Emperor. Even if he was given 10,000 guts, he would not dare to seek revenge from the Mysterious Sword Paradise. All right, since no one has any more questions, we can begin the battle for the Sword Palace. No matter which force suppresses the other forces and obtains the final victory, it will be the 4th Sword Palace of our Sword region. When the 4 from the Mysterious Sword Cave arrived, the Copper Sword Emissary did not waste any more time. He summoned a bronze battle arena, which floated in the air. When he released the restrictions on the bronze battle arena, the battle arena continued to expand and sat heavily on the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain. Mid-grade transcendent holy treasure. Yi Chenfeng did not expect the Heavenly Sword Hall to have such a treasure. He had a new estimation of the foundation of the Heavenly Sword Hall. All right, I will now announce the rules of the Sword Palace battle. The Copper Sword Emissary looked around at the crowd with different expressions and announced loudly, "The Sword Palace battle will be a single elimination round. Each force can send 4 people to participate in the battle. Once the candidates have been decided, no substitutions will be allowed. The last person who has the last laugh will advance. Now, family heads and family heads, please draw lots to decide your opponents." As he spoke, 6 white balls of light appeared in the Copper Sword Emissary's hand and floated in the air. In the end, after drawing lots, the mountain-breaking sword sect met their old rival, the Tantai family. The strongest heaven-shaking sword sect met the Qian family. The Mysterious Sword Cave met the Hunyuan sword sect. Alright, now, the experts from the Mysterious Sword Cave and the Hunyuan sword sect, who have drawn lot number 1, please come to the battle arena. After the drawing of lots, the first battle began immediately. Whoosh! An ear-piercing sound pierced through the air. Xian Xia, who was wearing a white martial arts suit, was not tall but full of charm. Rays of light flashed under her feet as she appeared on the bronze battle arena. Silence awaited her opponent. Sect head, let me go up and test her strength. the number one disciple of the Hunyuan sword sect, Yuan Zhuo, who had cultivated the glazed diamond body and had broken through to the half-ancestor realm, said with high fighting spirit. "Alright." The Hunyuan sword sect head nodded. He looked at Xianxia, whose body was covered in a layer of white light, and said in a low voice, "Do what you can and don't try to be brave. Don't worry, sect head. I will win this battle." Although Yuan Zhuo had not broken through to the ancestor realm, he had cultivated the glazed diamond body to the greater mastery realm. His physical body was comparable to a half-ancestor artifact. In addition, he had cultivated the Hunyuan sword art to the greater mastery realm. He was strong enough to fight an ordinary ancestor realm expert. "If you can block 3 of my attacks, you win." The delicate Xianxia looked at the burly Yuan Zhuo, who had leaped onto the battle arena, and said coldly with high fighting spirit. Whoosh! As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, the 3 sects and 2 families were in an uproar. Although Yuan Zhuo had not broken through to the ancestor realm, he had cultivated the glazed diamond body to the greater mastery realm. His offense and defense were strong. Ordinary ancestor realm experts would not dare to say that they could defeat him in 3 attacks. Could this little girl be an ancestor realm expert? An inconceivable thought appeared in the soul sea of the experts from the various factions. "Okay, remember what you said." Yuan Zhuo revealed a dangerous smile. He stimulated the power of his bloodline. His strong body continued to expand. The muscles on his body swelled to the limit. A layer of dark golden light covered the surface of his body, releasing a strong sense of oppression. "Maybe I won't need 3 attacks." When Yuan Zhuo raised the defense of the glazed diamond body to the limit, Xianxia made her move. The long sword hanging behind her let out an ear-piercing sound and flew into her hand. With a slash of the sword, the entire space shook violently. The terrifying sword light left a deep sword scar in the air as it slashed towards Yuan Zhuo's body. The speed of this sword attack was too fast. It was so fast that no one had time to think. However, the focused Yuan Zhuo caught the trajectory of this sword attack and immediately used the Hunyuan sword art to meet it. Ka-cha-cha! When Yuan Zhuo's Hunyuan sword light and Yu Xianxia's sword light collided, the Hunyuan sword light shattered like glass. "What?" Yuan Zhuo's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that his full power attack was broken so easily. Just when he wanted to dodge, this extreme sword light ruthlessly slashed his body, leaving a deep sword scar on his body that was comparable to a pseudo-ancestor artifact. He was forced to retreat step by step. Second sword. After injuring Yuan Zhuo with one sword attack, Xianxia followed up with another attack. She lightly tapped the ground with the tip of her foot and leaped high into the air. In an instant, hundreds of incomparably sharp sword shadows appeared, cutting through all obstacles and slashing towards Yuan Zhuo, whose expression changed greatly. Chi, chi, chi. Amidst the dense, shattering sounds, Yuan Zhuo's continuous attacks were shattered. The dense sword shadows continued to slash his body, riddling his glazed diamond body with thousands of holes. He was thrown hundreds of meters away, directly falling out of the stage and losing the battle. In just 2 moves, the number 1 genius of the Hunyuan sword sect, Yuan Zhuo, who had cultivated the glazed diamond body to the great success stage, had lost the battle. Chapter 1882. Next. After defeating Yuan Zhuo, Xianxia looked at the ashen-faced Hunyuan sect master and the others and said domineeringly, "1-star Tao ancestor. How can mysterious sword cave heaven be so strong? They just sent a little girl and she's already a 1-star Tao ancestor." Seeing Xianxia's strength, Powentian was shocked. The Tao ancestor realm was his life's goal, but he couldn't cross the last step. He couldn't imagine how Xianxia had become a 1-star Tao ancestor. Not only is Xianxia a 1-star Tao ancestor, the sword in her hand is also a quasi-ancestral artifact. Yi Chenfeng's eyes were extremely sharp. With a single glance, He could tell that Xianxia was a quasi-ancestral artifact. Ah, it seems that our mountain-breaking sword sect has no hope of winning the Sword Palace battle. Powentian sighed deeply and said in despair. Not necessarily. Yi Chunfeng shook his head. However, after seeing Xianxia's strength, no one in the mountain-breaking sword sect thought highly of Yi Chunfeng. In their opinion, Xianxia alone could defeat them. Moreover, there were still 3 people from Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven who hadn't fought yet, and they were probably stronger. Let me. Hunyuan Sect Master took a deep breath and appeared on the bronze fighting arena with the Hunyuan Sword Sect's most precious treasure, a supreme-grade transcendent divine weapon. Although Hunyuan Sect Master was slightly stronger than Yuan Zhua, there was a limit to his strength. He was only able to block 4 of Xianxia's attacks before he was sent flying out of the arena by Xianxia's fierce killing move, losing the match. Hunyuan Sword Sect admits defeat. The 2 strongest people were defeated by Xianxia one after another, and she didn't consume much energy. Hunyuan Sect Master was pale and had no choice but to admit defeat in humiliation. It's our turn. After Mysterious Sword Cave Heaven and Hunyuan Sword Sect, it was the mountain-breaking sword sect and Tantai Clan's turn. Powentian, even if Tantai Clan doesn't have the last laugh, we'll trample you under our feet. Tantai Fa looked fiercely at Powentian and the others and said coldly in his heart, Father, let me go first. Tantai Ying, who was a 6-star Dao god, was wearing a black martial arts suit that outlined her sexy body. Her fair face was full of pockmarks, and there was an obvious scar at the corner of her eye that destroyed the beauty of her face. Tantai Ying, who was a 6-star Dao god, spoke with high fighting spirit. All right. Tantai Fa nodded and said, Don't show mercy. Killing is not a taboo in this contest for the Sword Palace. It would be best if we can kill 1 or 2 of them. Don't worry, Father. I know what to do. Tantai Ying nodded. She exerted some force with her slender legs and drew a beautiful arc in the air before landing in the center of the combat arena. Great Elder Hua, who do you want to go first? When Powentian saw that the Tantai clan had sent out Tantai Ying, who was ranked 3rd in the Tantai clan, he turned his head to look at Great Elder Hua and the others who had a grave expression on their faces. Although Great Elder Hua was powerful, he was not confident that he could defeat Tantai Ying. Moreover, he knew that given the grudge between the Tantai clan and the mountain-breaking sword sect, this battle would be extremely fierce. Leave it to me. Yi Chunfeng took a step forward and instantly appeared in the combat arena. He appeared in front of Tantai Ying, who had a sexy figure but a ferocious appearance. Tantai Ying frowned when she saw Yi Chunfeng, who was standing tall with his hands behind his back. Silence. Tantai Ying looked at Yi Chunfeng. She felt that he was like a cloud of fog that she could not see through. She could not tell if he was real or fake. She could not help but put up her guard. She summoned an upper transcendent sacred weapon longsword and held it in her hand. She secretly increased her attack power to the maximum and was ready to launch a thunderous attack on Yi Chunfeng. Swish! An ear-piercing sound pierced through the air. As soon as the battle began, Tantai Ying performed the strongest attack that she had mastered. Instantly, hundreds of extremely sharp sword shadows were intertwined and swept toward Yi Chunfeng like a meteor shower. Meteor Shadowless Sword, Tantai Clan's top-notch sword technique. In the face of Tantai Ying's Meteor Shadowless Sword attack, Yi Chunfeng did not dodge. Instead, he stood on the spot in silence. Damn, what is that guy doing? Why isn't he dodging? I think he is scared silly by Tantai Clan's Meteor Shadowless Sword and does not know what to do. Just when everyone thought that Yi Chunfeng would be penetrated by the Meteor Shadowless Sword and die, Yi Chunfeng made his move. He gently waved his arm, and a force of over 500 billion Jin instantly erupted, causing the space in front of him to vibrate violently. Like a raging wave, it shattered the layers of Meteor Shadowless Swords and blasted onto Tantai Ying's body, sending her flying. Boom! Tantai Ing fell out of the combat arena. Her broken body could not withstand the terrifying strength that surged into her body and shattered immediately. Oh my God, am I seeing things? He waved his arm gently and killed Tantai Ing, who is a 6-star Tao god. Where did this guy come from? How can his strength be so terrifying? Amazing. It turns out that this guy is a ruthless character. Looking at the scene in front of them that was completely different from what they had imagined, the experts of the major forces exclaimed. They could not believe what they had seen. Ing seeing his daughter being killed by Yi Chunfeng, Tantai Fa could not help but roar angrily. He could not wait to go into the combat arena and tear Yi Chunfeng into pieces. What? You want to kill me to avenge your daughter? Looking at the angry eyes of Tantai Fa and the others, Yi Chunfeng put his hands behind his back and said indifferently, If you want to take revenge, you can come at me together. It will save time. No need. I can kill you myself. Tantai Xiong, who had disappeared for hundreds of years and had broken through to the 1-star Tao ancestor realm and cultivated his body to the level of an ordinary ancestor beast, jumped onto the combat arena and said with a murderous look. Naive. Yi Chunfeng looked at Tantai Xiong with contempt and spat out 2 words softly. You're courting death. Tantai Xiong's face darkened. A powerful sound wave erupted from his mouth and bombarded Yi Chunfeng. At the moment when he sent out the powerful sound wave, he summoned a best-grade celestial Saint Tool level long sword inlaid with 7 gems. The sword carried the momentum of heaven and earth and turned into a sword of celestial Saint Tool more than 100 feet long. It slashed toward Yi Chunfeng. In the face of Tantai Xiong's double attack, Yi Chunfeng's expression did not change. He took a step forward. As he took a step forward, the middle-grade celestial Saint Tool level combat arena trembled violently. Boom! Yi Chunfeng punched Tantai Xiong with a shocking power. With an unparalleled power, the punch shattered the sound wave and the sword of celestial Saint Tool. It shook Tantai Xiong back several steps. After shaking Tantai Xiong back with 1 punch, Yi Chunfeng took a second step. All the bones in his body sounded at the same time. He punched Tantai Xiong again with a stronger power. Dong, dong, dong. The combat arena trembled violently as if a heavenly bell had appeared, constantly emitting deafening sounds. Yi Chunfeng punched 8 times in a row. Tantai Xiong, who had no power to fight back, was forced to the edge of the combat arena. He spat out a lot of blood. The supreme-grade transcendent saint artifact in his hand could not withstand Yi Chunfeng's 8 punches, and cracks appeared on it. The last punch. Yi Chunfeng showed a cruel smile and punched Tantai Xiong, who was seriously injured for the 9th time. Chapter 1883. Tantai Xiong is dead. Oh my God, Tantai Xiong, who was secretly sent out by the Tantai clan to cultivate for hundreds of years, was killed by someone's fist. When did such a monster appear in the mountain-breaking sword sect? After witnessing the scene of Yi Chunfeng killing Tantai Xiong with 9 punches, the Sky Sword Mountain was filled with gasps. Everyone was deeply shocked by Yi Chunfeng's terrifying strength, and the way they looked at him was constantly changing. Even Bronze Sword Envoy, Juyan Long, and the people of the mysterious Sword Cave Heaven were surprised by Yi Chunfeng's terrifying physical strength. He actually has such strength? Qianbingzi, who had never taken Yi Chunfeng seriously, had a strange light in her eyes. Powentian, on the other hand, was pleasantly surprised, and the sullenness in his heart was swept away. Xiong Tantai Fa could not accept this fact at all. He let out a long cry and was about to rush into the arena to fight Yi Chunfeng. Family head, don't be impulsive. Yi Chunfeng is too strong. Even if you rush up, you can't avenge the young master and young lady. Several elders of the Tantai clan held Tantai Fa, who was on the verge of a mental breakdown, and tried to persuade him loudly. Tantai Fa, I'm standing right here. If you want to avenge them, then come up. When Yi Chunfeng saw Tantai Fa being hugged by several people, He placed his hands behind his back and looked at him calmly. Then, he spoke with neither joy nor sorrow. The Tantai clan admits defeat. The first elder of the Tantai clan glared angrily at Yi Chunfeng, but he had to admit defeat in the end. I originally thought that the mountain-breaking sword sect and the Hunyuan sword sect were the two weakest forces. Now it seems that the mountain-breaking sword sect is obviously a wolf in sheep's clothing. Their true strength may be even stronger than our heaven-shaking sword sect. It's useless no matter how strong the mountain-breaking sword sect is. The main character today is destined. I'm afraid no one can defeat the mysterious sword cave heaven and take the position of the sword palace. Seeing that Yi Chunfeng had forced the Tantai clan to bow their heads to him, the various forces began to quietly discuss the mountain-breaking sword sect. Even the people from the 7 Absolute Sword Palace were secretly sizing up Powentian and the others. Next match, Heaven-Shaking Sword Sect vs. Qian Family. The elder of the Chijua Sword Palace, who was in charge of presiding over the battle for the Sword Palace, looked deeply at Yi Chunfeng as he stepped down from the arena and announced loudly. The match between the Heaven-Shaking Sword Sect and the Qian Family was the most exciting of the 3 matches. The two forces were evenly matched in strength, and their foundations were similar as well. They fought to the last person. In the end, the number 1 genius of the heaven-shaking swordsmanship sect, Zhen Tianxing, who had broken through to the 1-star Dao ancestor realm, defeated Qian Bingzi, the peerless goddess of the Qian family, and won the 3rd match for the heaven-shaking swordsmanship sect. At this point, the 3 sword palace battles had ended. The mountain-breaking sword sect, the Xianjian Grotto, and the heaven-shaking sword sect had advanced to the 2nd round. Alright, you all have a day to rest. The 2nd round of the competition will begin tomorrow morning. The 2nd round will be a round-robin tournament. The faction that has the last laugh will be promoted to the Sword Palace. The 7 Despair Sword Palace's first elder announced. Awesome, I've never been as happy as I am today. Even if I can't be promoted to the Sword Palace, it's still worth it. Watching Yi Chunfeng kill the 2 geniuses of the Tantai family, Powentian felt extremely satisfied. In addition, the Hunyuan sword sect had also suffered heavy casualties. As long as the mountain-breaking sword sect seized the opportunity, they would be able to suppress the other 2 forces. However, Yi Chunfeng, if you encounter the Xianjian Grotto tomorrow, you must not go on a killing spree. If I'm not wrong, the Xianjian Grotto is related to the Xianjian Emperor. If you offend the Xianjian Emperor, other than the Sword God, no one can save you. Powentian warned seriously. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yi Chunfeng replied indifferently. However, he was not going to show any mercy. After all, the sword domain had betrayed the human race and joined the heaven race. This made Yi Chunfeng feel ashamed. After going deep into the sword domain, Yi Chunfeng realized that the sword domain's overall strength was very strong. If the sword domain appeared, it might set off a bloody storm in the void god world. It might even threaten the human race. Therefore, Yi Chunfeng was prepared to nip this threat in the bud. First Elder Ju, do you know the background of Yi Chunfeng? After seeing Yi Chunfeng kill Tantai Ying and Tantai Xiong, the bronze sword emissary revealed a shocked expression. He found Zhu Yanlong and asked in a low voice, I heard from Powentian that Yi Chunfeng is a guest of the mountain-breaking sword sect. Zhu Yanlong said, Guest? The bronze sword emissary said with an unfriendly expression, First Elder Ju, you should know the significance of this battle. There is only one main character in this battle, and that is the mysterious Sword Grotto. Therefore, you should warn the mountain-breaking sword sect and tell them to restrain themselves. If that Yi Chunfeng recklessly kills the descendant of the mysterious Sword Emperor, then you and I won't be able to bear the consequences. I understand, I will call Powentian over right now. Zhu Yanlong said with an ashen expression. He immediately ordered someone to call Powentian over to the stone hall. No one knew what they talked about, but when Powentian left the stone hall, his brows were tightly knitted together as if he was having an intense mental struggle. Sigh, forget it, forget it. Thinking about how terrifying the 7 Absolute Sword Palace was, Powentian took a deep breath. He took out a fragrant wine and found Yi Chunfeng sitting cross-legged in the snow. Honored Elder Yi, the weather is very cold. Do you want to drink my mountain-breaking sword sect's unique wine to dispel the cold? Wine. Yi Chunfeng opened his eyes that shot out a myriad of lights. He looked at Powentian's slightly unnatural expression and said, "Okay, I'll try it." After saying that, Yi Chunfeng took the wine from Wentian. After opening it, he gulped down 2 large mouthfuls of wine. It is indeed a good wine. Yi Chunfeng revealed a thought-provoking smile as he downed the entire bottle of fragrant wine. Honored Elder Yi, rest well. I'll leave the round-robin competition to you tomorrow. After Yi Chunfeng finished the entire bottle, Powentian heaved a sigh of relief and left with the empty bottle. Yi Chunfeng's expression turned cold as he watched Powentian leave. He closed his eyes and controlled the chaos divine wood to completely absorb the poison in the wine. The night passed quickly. When the first rays of the morning sun shone through the snow and onto the peak of Sky Sword Mountain, the second day's round-robin competition began. Just as Yi Chunfeng had guessed, the first match was between the mountain-breaking sword sect and the heaven-shaking sword sect. Looking at Yi Chunfeng, who represented the mountain-breaking sword sect and was the first to enter the stage, the heaven-shaking sword sect's sect master Jin Taohai, who had broken through to the 1-star Dao ancestor realm, revealed a solemn expression and said, "Tianxing, this Yi Chunfeng should be the same as you, a 1-star Dao ancestor expert. You must be careful when facing him. If you can't beat him, immediately admit defeat." "Don't worry, father. I will definitely cut off his head." Zhen Tianxing, who was known as the #1 expert of the younger generation of the 3 sects and 2 clans, had absolute confidence in his own strength. He leaped into the air with a quasi-ancestor-level longsword in his hand and landed in front of Yi Chunfeng. Zhen Tianxing raised his quasi-ancestor-level longsword high and pointed it at Yi Chunfeng as he said arrogantly and overbearingly, "Yi Chunfeng, show me your true strength. Only then will it be interesting." Yi Chunfeng clasped his hands behind his back and directly looked down on Zhen Tianxing, who had suppressed the younger generation of the 3 sects and 2 clans, and said, "You think you're not qualified to see my true strength? Is that so? I'll let you know right away whether I have this ability or not." Zhen Tianxing's eyes shot out rays of sharpness. A powerful sword intent spread out from his tall and straight body, pushing his strength to rise steadily. Chapter 1884. 2-star Dao Ancestor. This Zhen Tianxing actually concealed his strength when he fought with me. Sensing that Zhen Tianxing had the strength of a 2-star Dao ancestor in an instant, the proud and arrogant Qian Bingzi suffered a heavy blow. Heavens, Zhen Tianxing actually concealed such a trump card. Consecrator Yi Chunfeng is probably going to lose. Great Elder Hua shook his head, no longer optimistic about Yi Chunfeng. Not only did Great Elder Hua of the Mountain-Breaking Sword sect not think highly of Yi Chunfeng, but almost everyone present also did not think highly of Yi Chunfeng. In the progenitor realm, the difference in strength between each level was very big. It was almost impossible to defeat an enemy of a higher level. Die! Zhen Tianxing's eyes shot out rays of ominous light. He quickly stabbed the half-step ancestor longsword in his hand towards Yi Chunfeng's throat like a lightning bolt. "A 2-star Dao ancestor wants to defeat me?" Yi Chunfeng revealed a disdainful smile. Silence stood where he was, allowing the incomparably sharp half-step ancestor longsword to stab towards his throat. Seeing Yi Chunfeng's throat being pierced by the sword, Yi Chunfeng suddenly stretched out 2 fingers, crushed the sharp sword rays emitted by the half-step ancestor longsword, and clamped the tip of the sword. "What? How is this possible? Is Yi Chunfeng's fingers an ancestral weapon? How can he clamp the tip of a half-step ancestor weapon?" The silent sky sword mountain peak suddenly fell into chaos. The experts of various major forces continuously gasped. Elder sister, can you tell what realm Yi Qinfeng is at? Xian Xia, who had displayed her invincible might yesterday, was also disappointed by Yi Qinfeng's strength. She turned her head to look at Xian Ziwei, who had long purple hair, skin as smooth as milk, and a face that could bring calamity to countries without a single blemish. She could steal all the light around her just by standing there in silence. This Yi Qinfeng is very frightening. I don't have the confidence to defeat him. Xian Ziwei's beautiful eyes revealed a strange light as she stared at Yi Qinfeng and said in a serene voice, Elder sister, even you are not confident? Xian Xia was well aware of Xia Ziwei's strength. She was a rare genius in the Xianjian grotto. Even the Xianjian emperor had nothing but praise for her. With her age and strength, it would be difficult to find a match even in the Heavenly Sword Hall. Yes, haven't you realized that Yi Qinfeng isn't using any sword techniques? He's just using brute force to fight his opponent. I think it's just as he said. This heaven-shaking roar doesn't have the qualifications to make him use his full strength. Xia Ziwei nodded. Then sister, do you think he'll ruin our plan? Xian Xia asked worriedly. Don't worry with father here, that Yi Qinfeng is useless no matter how strong he is. My mysterious sword paradise is destined to be the fourth sword palace in the sword domain. Xian Ziwei's cold face revealed an extremely strong confidence as she spoke without hesitation. Heaven-shaking Xing, did you not eat? Why is your sword so weak? Yi Qinfeng said indifferently as he tapped his finger lightly and flicked heaven-shaking sword back. Heaven-shaking sword technique. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Heaven-shaking Xing unleashed the strongest sword technique of the heaven-shaking sword sect with all his strength and attacked Yi Qinfeng. Buzz buzz buzz. A series of frequently vibrating sword techniques attacked, causing the space to tremble violently. While attacking Yi Qinfeng's body, it also attacked his soul. However, Yi Qinfeng's strength was much stronger than heaven-shaking Xing's. He withstood the soul attack of heaven-shaking sword technique and rushed towards the heaven-shaking sword radiance. Relying on his strong physical body, he directly shattered the heaven-shaking sword radiance and approached the frightened heaven-shaking Xing. Where do you think you're going? Feeling the terror of Yi Qinfeng, heaven-shaking Xing wanted to dodge. However, the moment he dodged, Yi Qinfeng quickly struck out with his palm. It was like a huge mountain that ruthlessly pressed down on heaven-shaking Xing's body, directly chopping him down to the ground from mid-air. Heavens! What kind of monster is that Yi Qinfeng? Even with Zhen Tianxing's current strength, the heaven-shaking sword art unleashed by the half-martial ancestor longsword in his hand was actually shattered by his body alone. Is this guy really going to defy the heavens? I had to make arrangements in advance and let Powentian poison him. Otherwise, the plan might be disrupted because of him. Zhu Yanlong whispered. The competition is over. Give me the antidote, Bronze Sword Envoy said with flickering eyes. Sword Envoy, you want to subdue Yi Qinfeng? Zhu Yanlong asked. That's right. This Yi Qinfeng is a talent. If I can use him, I can give him an opportunity. However, if he is stubborn, then don't blame me for being ruthless. The Bronze Sword Envoy nodded his head as he said this. Tyrannical kick. After sending heaven-shaking Xing to the ground with his palm, Yi Qinfeng immediately stepped out with his tyrannical kick. It crushed the space and ruthlessly stomped on heaven-shaking Xing's body with a force of billions of genes. The terrifying power directly stomped on heaven-shaking Xing's body, causing him to howl in pain, and the sound of bones breaking resounded. Heaven-shaking. Seeing that heaven-shaking Xing was in danger, heaven-shaking Hai's eyes immediately turned red and he shouted, Stop! I admit defeat on behalf of heaven-shaking Xing. In the face of heaven-shaking Hai's roar, Yi Qinfeng was unmoved. He stepped out a second time. With one step, everything wailed. The terrifying power seemed to want to trample through the arena. It ruthlessly stomped on heaven-shaking Xing's body, turning him into meat paste. His incomparably hard Saint core was also crushed by the tyrannical kick. Yi Chunfeng, I just admitted defeat on behalf of Heaven-Shaking Xing. Why do you still want to kill him? Seeing Heaven-Shaking Xing being stomped into meat paste by Yi Chunfeng, Heaven-Shaking Hai felt his heart bleeding. He roared at Yi Chunfeng. Is that so? But I didn't hear it. Yi Chunfeng stood in the air and looked at Heaven-Shaking Xing, who was roaring like an angry lion, and said plainly, Yi Chunfeng, my Heaven-Shaking Sword sect will not rest until you die. Heaven-Shaking Xing was the Heaven-Shaking Sword sect's greatest hope. Even if the Heaven-Shaking Sword sect couldn't advance into a sword palace, Heaven-Shaking Sword sect wouldn't decline for tens of thousands of years with Heaven-Shaking Xing around. But now, Heaven-Shaking Sword sect's future pillar, Heaven-Shaking Sword sect had suffered an immeasurable loss. Won't rest until you die? Yi Chunfeng smiled and said domineeringly, Sure, then your Heaven-Shaking Sword sect can come at me together. Let's see who will die in the end. You. Heaven-Shaking Hai was so angry that he almost lost his mind. However, Yi Chunfeng's strength was too horrifying, causing him to be fearful. Moreover, since Yi Chunfeng dared to challenge the Heaven-Shaking Sword sect alone, he must have some unknown means. Thinking about this, his rationality suppressed his anger. Heaven-Shaking Hai Tao took a few deep breaths and held back his impulse. Yi Chunfeng, my Heaven-Shaking Sword sect admits defeat this time. But this enmity, my Heaven-Shaking Sword sect will definitely take revenge. Just wait for our revenge. No need to be so troublesome. Let's wait for the Sword Palace contest to end and settle this. Yi Chunfeng said plainly. Sect Master Zhen, I wonder if you will continue the contest? The elders of the Qijua Sword Palace looked at Heaven-Shaking Hai Tao and the others and asked in a low voice. My Heaven-Shaking Sword sect admits defeat. Hearing the threat in Yi Chunfeng's words, Heaven-Shaking Hai Tao and the others revealed a deep fear. However, thinking about the relationship between Heaven-Shaking Sword sect and Qijua Sword Palace, they were slightly relieved. They were prepared to pay any price to ask Zhu Yanlong to kill Yi Chunfeng and avenge Heaven-Shaking Xing coward. Chapter 1885. After 2 hours of rest, we will begin the second match between the Heaven-Shaking Sword sect and the mysterious Sword Paradise. After the first match, the elder of the Qijua Sword Palace looked deeply at Yi Chunfeng and announced loudly. The Heaven-Shaking Sword sect admits defeat. The death of Zhen Tianxing was a huge blow to Zhen Haitao. In order to take revenge on Yi Chunfeng, Zhen Haitao directly admitted defeat and allowed the mysterious Sword Paradise to compete with Yi Chunfeng in their best condition. Since the Heaven-Shaking Sword sect has admitted defeat, then the final match between the Mountain-Breaking Sword sect and the mysterious Sword Paradise will begin in 2 hours. The winner will become the 4th Sword Palace of the Sword Domain. The elder of the Qijua Sword Palace announced loudly. There's no need for 2 hours. I didn't use much energy just now. Let's begin now. Yi Chunfeng didn't use much strength to stomp Sky-Shaking Xing to death. He directly leaped onto the battle stage and said, Who else but me? Damn it. If I don't kill Yi Chunfeng, I swear I'm not human. After being humiliated by Yi Chunfeng again and again, Zhen Haitao was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. If it wasn't for Yi Chunfeng's terrifying strength, Zhen Haitao would have lost control and jumped onto the arena to fight it out with Yi Chunfeng. The elder of the Qijua Sword Palace looked deeply at Yi Chunfeng and announced loudly, Very well. Then I announce the start of the last match. Father, sister, let me continue to be the vanguard. I want to see what he's capable of. Xian Xia looked at Yi Chunfeng with high fighting spirit and said eagerly, Very well. Sir, this Yi Chunfeng is not simple. You must be careful when facing him. Remember not to be careless. The leader of the mysterious Sword Paradise, Xian Yi, solemnly warned. Don't worry, father. I have the amulet given to me by the ancestor. I'll be fine. Xian Xia said confidently. The tip of her foot lightly touched the snowy ground. With a beautiful turn, she appeared on the arena as if she had teleported. Yi Chunfeng, you're even more outstanding than I thought. However, if you want to defeat me, you'll need to show me some real skills. Xian Xia clenched her small fists at Yi Chunfeng and said aggressively, "If you can take 3 of my finger attacks, I don't mind showing you my true abilities." Yi Chunfeng looked at Xian Xia, who was extremely talented and had become a 1-star Dao ancestor at such a young age. Arrogant. Xian Xia was also a genius. When she heard the disdain in Yi Chunfeng's words, she was infuriated. With a thought, she summoned 18 extremely sharp half-progenitor swords, which floated above her head and locked onto Yi Chunfeng. Not bad. However, a half-martial ancestor is unable to harm me. Yi Chunfeng's body was as tough as a high-grade Transcendent Saint artifact, and he also had 2 ancestral armors, one of which was a mid-grade ancestral artifact. No matter how strong Xian Xia was, she couldn't break through his defenses. Is that so? Xian Xia ground her teeth and said, "I hope you'll still be so stubborn in a while." With that, Xian Xia didn't wait for the match to begin. She immediately controlled the 18 half-progenitor swords and launched a fierce attack at Yi Chunfeng with ear-piercing sound. As the 18 half-progenitor swords attacked, Yi Chunfeng gently pointed his finger. With the point of his finger, a 10,000-foot-long sword light burst out from the tip of his right index finger. It tore through the air and pointed at the 18 half-progenitor swords. Buzz, buzz, buzz. A series of ear-piercing sword cries rang out. The 18 half-progenitor swords were pushed back by Yi Chunfeng's point of his finger. "You're really capable." Xian Xia's expression changed slightly. She controlled the 18 half-progenitor swords and quickly merged them into a 10-foot-long sword of light, which was entwined with powerful Dao will. It slashed at Yi Chunfeng with astonishing power. As the sword slashed down, the entire space immediately went berserk. It gave people the illusion that the space was being torn apart by the giant sword. Faced with Xian Xia's combined attack of 18 half-ancestor swords, Yi Chunfeng still extended a finger to meet it head-on. He tapped on the enormous sword that possessed extremely terrifying might, enough to kill an ordinary 1-star ancestor realm almighty. Ka ka ka. After withstanding Yi Chunfeng's finger sword, which contained more than 500 billion gene of force and a portion of progenitor intent, cracks immediately appeared on the giant sword. In the end, it couldn't withstand Yi Chunfeng's finger attack and exploded. Sword tornado. Xian Xia didn't give up after her attacks were broken. She continued to use her ultimate move. She controlled the 18 half-progenitor swords to spin rapidly, forming an extremely powerful sword tornado. It swept Yi Chunfeng inside and began to strangle him. "I told you, the half-progenitor swords can't hurt me." Just when the spectating experts thought that Yi Chunfeng would lose a layer of skin even if he didn't die, Yi Chunfeng pointed his finger again and directly tore apart the sword tornado. After breaking Xian Xia's attack, he calmly walked out. How can Yi Chunfeng be so strong? Powentian didn't expect Yi Chunfeng to hide his strength so deeply. Instead of being surprised, he frowned and couldn't help but think of the reason for the death of the lawbreaker sword. Bronze Sword Envoy, can you see Yi Chunfeng's true strength? Juyan Long also didn't expect Yi Chunfeng to be so strong. He couldn't help but ask Bronze Sword Envoy, whose eyes flashed. Bronze Sword Envoy slowly said, "Yi Chunfeng should be at the peak of the 1-star Dao Ancestor realm. However, his combat strength is terrifying. I'm afraid that he has reached the peak of the 2-star Dao Ancestor realm. Moreover, he hasn't used any weapons or techniques until now. It's possible that his true combat strength is comparable to that of a 3-star Dao Ancestor realm." Juyan Long gasped and said, 1-star Dao Ancestor realm and the combat strength of a 3-star Dao Ancestor realm. When did such a terrifying monster appear in our sword realm? Humph, it doesn't matter how amazing his talent is. If he doesn't submit to our heavenly sword hall, then I can only kill him." Bronze Sword Envoy, who was a 4-star Dao ancestor, snorted. In his opinion, it was useless even if Yi Chunfeng had the ability to reach the heavens. With his strength, killing Yi Chunfeng would be a matter of minutes and seconds. "Very well, take my seal." After 3 fingers, Yi Chunfeng immediately changed his move. His hands quickly twisted and quickly condensed a powerful grand palm seal between his palms. It seemed to contain the sun, the moon, and the stars. Sun, moon, and star seal. Yi Chunfeng struck out with both palms. The sun, moon, and star seal, which had fused 500 billion pounds of strength and the ancestral Tao diagram of heaven and earth, attacked Xian Xia, whose expression changed greatly. Feeling the destructive power of the sun, moon, and star seal, Xian Xia spat out several mouthfuls of life blood and fused it into the 18 half-ancestor sword. She activated their strongest attack and used the strongest move she knew to meet the attack. Boom! When the 18 half-ancestor swords, which were filled with powerful Tao will, slashed at the sun, moon, and star seal, a series of shattering sounds immediately rang out. They were unable to stop the attack of the sun, moon, and star seal. Not good. Seeing the sun, moon, and star seal easily shatter the attack of the 18 half-ancestor swords, Xian Xia's expression changed slightly. She used a strange footwork to dodge with all her strength. But in the instant she dodged, the sun, moon, and star seal, which was covered in cracks, exploded. The terrifying power blasted cracks in the tough space and bombarded Xian Xia's body. She was unable to dodge, and she was instantly annihilated. Just as Xian Xia's body was about to be torn apart by the explosive power of the sun, moon, and star seal, a piece of jade hanging from her neck shattered. It formed a powerful defensive power that enveloped Xian Xia and helped her block the fatal attack. Chapter 1886. Sister, I will help you to exhaust his ancestral power. Seeing Xian Xia lose to Yi Chunfeng without being able to fight back, a young man with skin even fairer than a young girl's and eyes shining like 2 black gems standing beside Xian Ziwei said with an unparalleled battle intent. 2-star Dao ancestor. That young man from mysterious Sword Cave Heaven is a 2-star Dao ancestor. Heavens! How could mysterious Sword Cave Heaven have such a deep foundation? Even a random young man is an ancestral power. Feeling the battle intent and aura erupting from the young man's body, many experts from various forces were shocked. As for the Qian family, the Hunyuan sword sect, and the other forces, they were completely convinced. Xian Zhou, be careful. Xian Ziwei nodded and said calmly. No one could guess what she was thinking. Yi Chunfeng, I will fight with you. Xian Zhou took a deep breath and flew onto the arena like a sharp sword being drawn out of its sheath. 36 half-martial progenitor swords flew out of his body and circled around him. You're not my match either. Yi Chunfeng looked at Xian Zhou, who was brimming with battle intent, and lightly shook his head. While Yi Chunfeng and Xian Zhou were confronting each other, Zhu Yanlong immediately sent a message to Powentian, asking him to use a talisman to trigger the poison in Yi Chunfeng's body. Yi Chunfeng, don't blame me. Blame yourself for being too outstanding. After receiving Zhu Yanlong's message, Powentian took out a black talisman and spat a mouthful of blood essence into it, activating the power of the talisman and triggering the poison in Yi Chunfeng's body. However, Yi Chunfeng's poison had already been devoured by the chaotic divine wood. When the black talisman in Powentian's hand was burned to ashes, it did not cause any harm to Yi Chunfeng's body. How can this be? The sky absolute poison is ineffective against him. Looking at Yi Chunfeng, who was calm and did not show any signs of being poisoned, Powentian opened his eyes wide in disbelief. At this time, Yi Chunfeng and Xian Zhou were engaged in a fierce battle. Due to Xian Zhou's frightening strength, Yi Chunfeng didn't dare to be careless. He summoned a quasi-ancestral artifact longsword and interweaved sharp sword rays to engage in a fierce battle. Powentian, What are you waiting for? Quickly detonate the sky absolute poison in his body. Looking at Yi Chunfeng, who was getting more and more valiant as the battle progressed, completely suppressing Xianzhou and forcing him to retreat, Zhu Yanlong transmitted his voice in exasperation. Are reporting to the Great Elder, I just burned a black poison talisman, but I was unable to activate the sky absolute poison in Yi Chunfeng's body. Polaris replied, not knowing what to do. If one is not enough, then two. I don't believe that he can suppress the poison in his body forever. Zhu Yanlong gritted his teeth and said, Yes, yes. Po Wen Tian had no choice but to take out all the black poison talismans he had. He sprayed his lifeblood and ignited them all. His strange actions attracted the attention of all the major factions, causing many people to guess what Po Wen Tian's intentions were. Sect Master Wentian, are you burning paper money for the lawbreaker sword? Yi Chunfeng, who was completely suppressing Xianzhou, glanced at Po Wen Tian, who was sweating profusely, and said mockingly, You, meeting Yi Chunfeng's sharp eyes, Po Wen Tian felt an indescribable panic in his heart. He had a feeling that Yi Chunfeng had already seen through his little trick and removed the poison in his body. Wentian Sect Master, I advise you to save the paper money and burn it later. Perhaps there will be more people who will need you to burn paper money to help them ascend. Yi Chunfeng faintly smiled. His entire body fused with the quasi-ancestral artifact sword and slashed at Xianzhou, whose expression changed greatly as he controlled the 36 quasi-ancestral artifact swords to defend himself. The 36 quasi-ancestral artifact swords' defense was impregnable, but Yi Chunfeng's quasi-ancestral artifact sword was even more powerful. With one slash, the sword diagram formed by the 36 quasi-ancestral artifact swords was forcibly split apart. The terrifying sword aura carried with it the power to shatter mountains as it slashed at Xianzhou, who was unable to dodge in time. It shattered the amulet on his body and sent him flying out of the arena, thus losing the match. Yi Chunfeng looked at Xianzhou, who was vomiting blood and heavily falling to the ground, and said indifferently, Another amulet. Your Xianjian grotto is very rich. Without the amulet, Yi Chunfeng's sword would have been enough to kill him. Yi Chunfeng, you are really strong, but if you want to defeat my Xianjian grotto, this bit of strength is still not enough. A trace of anger appeared on Xian Ziwei's flawless face as sharp sword rays flickered under her feet. She was like a sword goddess as she appeared on the arena under the worship of tens of thousands of swords. Jade skin, divine body constitution. Yi Chunfeng stared at the incomparably cold and elegant Xian Ziwei with a trace of surprise. He did not expect Xian Ziwei to possess the jade skin divine body, which was rarely seen in 10,000 years. Your Excellency has good eyesight. After Yi Chunfeng pointed out her constitution, Xian Ziwei's calm eyes changed slightly. To respect your Excellency, I will do my best to defeat you. No, you are also no match for me. Yi Chunfeng looked at Xian Ziwei's beautiful face and gently shook his head. Is that so? I don't think so. Xian Ziwei took a deep breath and summoned an autumn water ancestral sword that was 6 feet and 6 inches long. The sword body was engraved with water patterns, and the hilt was inlaid with a godstone. Low-grade ancestral artifact. Yi Chunfeng was quite surprised to see that Xian Ziwei, a 2-star Tao ancestor, actually possessed a low-grade ancestral artifact. It should be known that an ancestral artifact was not comparable to a half-grade ancestral artifact. Without great opportunities and great luck, it was as difficult as ascending to the heavens to obtain the recognition of an ancestral artifact. Yi Chunfeng, show me your true strength and fight with me. With that, Xian Ziwei attacked Yi Chunfeng with the autumn water ancestral sword. Whoosh, whoosh. When she approached Yi Chunfeng, her body swayed slightly and instantly transformed into 8 beautiful figures, surrounding Yi Chunfeng in a circle. In the next moment, the 8 Xian Ziwei attacked at the same time, interweaving sharp sword rays to attack Yi Chunfeng, trying to cut him into pieces. 8. Ultimate Black Shadow Sword Technique. What a terrifying talent. Xian Ziwei has actually cultivated the strongest killing move created by the mysterious Sword Emperor. Seeing that Xian Ziwei had transformed into 8 figures to attack in an instant, the major forces were completely certain that Xian Ziwei and the others were the descendants of the mysterious Sword Emperor. Otherwise, the mysterious Sword Emperor would not have passed the 8 Ultimate Black Shadow Sword Technique, which was comparable to a supreme superpower, to Xian Ziwei. Yi Chunfeng did not panic when facing the attacks of the 8 Xian Ziwei figures at the same time. He gently waved his arm and mobilized the powerful spatial energy to form a terrifying spatial storm above his head, slowing down the attack speed of the 8 Ultimate Black Shadow Sword Technique and tearing open crack. When the 8 Ultimate Black Shadow Sword Technique's power did not decrease and cut through the spatial storm, Yi Chunfeng, who was extremely fast, had already disappeared, causing Xian Ziwei's attack to miss. 5th Level Spatial Law Transformation, Spatial Storm. Where did this Yi Chunfeng come from? Seeing that Yi Chunfeng not only had amazing combat strength, but also cultivated the illusory spatial law to the 5th level, many people had a strong curiosity about Yi Chunfeng's identity. The Copper Sword Envoy's eyes burned with passion. He had a strong interest in the spatial law that Yi Chunfeng had grasped. Not bad, not bad. Xian Ziwei, you are more outstanding than I imagined. Chapter 1887. Ancestral Artifact. Yi Chunfeng also has an ancestral artifact. Seeing the demon sealing sword spitting out sword lights that cut through space, the experts from the various factions were so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out. Regardless of the outcome of the match, we must capture Yi Chunfeng. We must not let him leave. Bronze Sword Envoy did not expect Yi Chunfeng to have so many secrets. Not only did he cultivate the spatial law to the 5th level, but he also had the extremely precious ancestral sword. All right, I will order people to set up a large array at the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain and seal this place. Zhu Yanlong nodded and called over several experts from the Qijue Sword Palace. He gave them a large number of array cornerstones and ordered them to set up an inescapable net around the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain. Yi Chunfeng, although you are powerful, it won't be easy for you to defeat me. Xian Ziwei's beautiful eyes shone with sharpness. With a thought, a sacred sword soul flew out of her sea of soul. A sacred sword soul. That beauty has actually cultivated a sacred sword soul. It seems like Yi Chunfeng is powerless to reverse the situation. Yeah, that beauty is already very powerful. Now that she has summoned a sacred sword soul, Yi Chunfeng will definitely lose. Looking at the sacred sword soul hovering above Xian Ziwei's head, almost no one was optimistic about Yi Chunfeng's chances. However, Powentian, who was in a daze, felt his heart beat wildly. This was because he clearly remembered that Yi Chunfeng had condensed an even more terrifying ancestral sword soul. Is this your trump card? It doesn't seem like much. Looking at the saint-grade sword soul that was emitting a piercing red light, Yi Chunfeng smiled disdainfully. All right, this match can end now. I'll let you see my trump card. As he spoke, an unparalleled black light flew out of Yi Chunfeng's sea of soul and hovered above his head. Black. That is an ancestral sword soul. Heavens! What kind of monster is this Yi Chunfeng? Not only is his physical body invincible, but he has also condensed an ancestor-grade sword soul. How can he let others live? Horrifying, this is too horrifying. Maybe Yi Chunfeng will have the last laugh. He will be able to suppress the mysterious sword cave heaven all by himself and win the final victory for the mountain-breaking sword sect. The experts of the various major forces were stunned by Yi Chunfeng's strength. Even the proud and arrogant Xian Ziwei, who rarely put anyone in her eyes, showed a trace of absent-mindedness. This was because she was very clear about the difficulty of condensing an ancestral sword soul. Even with her talent and resources, she was not completely confident that she could condense her sword soul to the ancestral realm. However, not only had Yi Chunfeng done it, he had also raised his ancestral sword soul to a very high level. Am I really not as good as him? Xian Ziwei felt a strong sense of defeat. What tricks do you have? Use them all. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't have a chance. Yi Chunfeng controlled the ancestor-grade sword soul and fused it into the demon sealing sword, activating all the ancestral inscriptions in the demon sealing sword. He raised the demon sealing sword high and pointed it at the solemn-looking Xian Ziwei. Yi Chunfeng, you are really powerful. However, it won't be that easy to defeat me. Xian Ziwei took a deep breath and removed all distracting thoughts from her mind. She used the mystic skill of the mysterious sword Cave Heaven that had been passed down for countless years. She burned her powerful bloodline power and forcibly raised her strength to the level of a 3-star Dao ancestor. With her strength soaring, Xian Ziwei did not hesitate. She held the autumn water ancestral sword and stabbed out streaks of sword light that looked down on the world. They were like endless sword waves that surged and swept towards Yi Chunfeng. Slash! The sword waves that tore through space attacked. Yi Chunfeng did not use a powerful sword move. Instead, he held the demon sealing sword and slashed down in the void. He slashed out with the sword and killed without mercy. The terrifying sword light was like a crescent moon that ruthlessly slashed at the oncoming sword waves. He relied on his absolute attack to break Xian Ziwei's attack. In the next moment, Yi Chunfeng stabbed at Xian Ziwei's towering chest with his sword. This stare was extremely slow in the eyes of the onlookers. However, in the eyes of Xian Ziwei, Copper Sword Envoy, and Absolute Flame Dragon, it was a different scene. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chunfeng's slow stab appeared at Xian Ziwei's chest. The terrifying sword light cut through all obstacles and directly tore Xian Ziwei's clothes and her inner armor, revealing a dazzling snow-white skin. If Xian Ziwei had not been so sharp and had not sensed danger and dodged early, this stab would have pierced through her chest. Seeing that Yi Chunfeng had cut open her clothes, revealing bits of her body, Xian Ziwei's body immediately shone with boundless sword light that enveloped her entire body. 2 intoxicating blushes appeared on her exquisite face. She looked at Yi Chunfeng with anger and annoyance. What? This is a battle of life and death. You still care about these things? Yi Chunfeng ignored Xian Ziwei's angry gaze and said, You should know that if you lose, you will lose your life. Yi Chunfeng, don't be so arrogant. It won't be that easy to defeat me. Xian Ziwei was so angry that her teeth itched. She activated the power of her saint-level sword soul and continuously used her strongest killing moves to attack Yi Chunfeng. Facing Yi Chunfeng, who was the strongest opponent she had ever met since her debut, Xian Ziwei's entire body's potential was stimulated. The power of her killing moves kept increasing. In addition, she used a secret technique to temporarily possess the power of a 3-star Dao ancestor. The entire arena became a sea of swords, surging violently. In the sea of swords, Yi Chunfeng did not panic. He was like an unshakable reef. No matter how the sea of swords attacked, it could not hurt him at all. How can Yi Chunfeng be so strong? Is he really only a 1-star Dao ancestor? It could be said that Yi Chunfeng's various techniques were beyond everyone's imagination. They could not believe what was happening in front of them. Father, do you think sister can win? Although Xian Xia blindly worshipped Xian Ziwei, after seeing Yi Chunfeng's amazing techniques, her confidence in Xian Ziwei's strength was constantly crumbling. It will be difficult. It will be very difficult. Xian Yi sighed softly. He had not expected this to happen today. Father, can you defeat Yi Chunfeng? Xian Xia gently bit her wet lips and asked somewhat unwillingly. Ziwei and I are on par. If Ziwei cannot defeat Yi Chunfeng, it will be very difficult for me to defeat him. Xian Yi shook his head. Then what should we do? Are we just going to give up the position of Sword Palace to the mountain-breaking sword sect? Xian Xia was unwilling to accept this. The mountain-breaking sword sect. Xian Yi glanced from afar at Wentian, who was like an ant on a hot pan. I really want to know how this will end today. One sword godless. Just as Xian Ziwei was unleashing her full power at all costs, Yi Chunfeng unleashed his ultimate killing move. The life-death ancestral Dao diagrams and the 5 elements ancestral Dao diagrams shot out of his body and merged with the demon sealing sword. With one stab, all the light in the entire space was stolen by the godless sword. The light instantly dimmed. It was as if this unparalleled divine sword was the only thing left in the world. Chi, chi, chi. Under the onslaught of one sword godless, Xian Ziwei's sea of swords was constantly shattered. The astonishing speed made it impossible for her to dodge. She could only watch in a daze as the divine sword pierced her body. She watched as Yi Chunfeng's soulless sword pierced through her body and killed her. The amulet around her neck shattered, blocking most of soulless sword's attack for her. However, she was still shaken by the powerful aftershock and fell to the edge of the arena. Large amounts of blood sprayed out of her mouth, dyeing her beautiful face red. Xian Ziwei, you have lost. Chapter 1888. Young Master Yi, please show mercy. Don't take my daughter's life. Xuanyi knew that Yi Chunfeng was a vicious and merciless person. He definitely wouldn't show mercy to Xian Ziwei because of her beauty, so he immediately shouted. However, Yi Chunfeng was unmoved. He continued to point the demon sealing sword at Xian Ziwei's throat. Because the demon sealing sword was too sharp, a gash appeared on Xian Ziwei's neck. A large amount of blood flowed out. Yi Chunfeng, what are you doing? I order you to put down your sword immediately. If you dare to hurt Xian Ziwei, I swear I'll wipe out your entire family. The burly bronze sword envoy's face sank. He used the tone of a superior and loudly ordered. Yi Chunfeng ignored bronze sword envoy's warning. He stared sharply at Xian Ziwei's pale face and considered whether or not to kill her. Xian Ziwei bit her lips and stared at Yi Chunfeng's arrogant face. She stubbornly said, Yi Chunfeng, I've lost. However, if you want me to beg for mercy, you better give up. Even if I die, I won't bow my head to you. Sigh, forget it. Yi Chunfeng did not expect Xian Ziwei to be so unyielding. When he thought about her relationship with the mysterious Sword King, Yi Chunfeng put away the demon sealing sword and did not take her life. Yi Chunfeng looked at Xian Yi, who had let out a sigh of relief, and asked domineeringly, Is your mysterious sword Grotto Heaven still going to fight? Yi Chunfeng, I don't know where you came from, but so what if you beat everyone? Ask Powentian if he dares to promote the mountain-breaking sword sect to a sword palace. Bronze Sword Envoy stared coldly at Yi Chunfeng and said, However, I see that your cultivation is not bad. If you are willing to submit to me, I can consider granting you an opportunity. Haha, you think you're worthy? Yi Chunfeng laughed. He did not think much of Bronze Sword Envoy at all. Yi Chunfeng, do you still not understand the situation you're in? Do you know the consequences of refusing? Copper Sword Emissary's face gradually darkened as he threatened. Situation? Are you saying that the peak of Sky Sword Mountain is enveloped by an array formation? Yi Chunfeng said fearlessly. What? You found out? Zhu Yen Long walked over and asked with a frown. You want to deceive the world with such a lowly method? You guys are a little naive. Yi Chunfeng smiled and said disdainfully. He was not worried about his situation at all. Fine, fine, fine. Yi Chunfeng, I'd like to see if you can still be so arrogant after I capture you. The short-tempered bronze sword user was infuriated. He roared furiously, then summoned a rusty iron sword and hacked towards Yi Chunfeng. Copper Sword Emissary was a 4-star Dao ancestor. His full-power attack was extremely powerful. The terrifying sword light was like a waterfall that cut through space. The terrifying power made everyone present feel fear. Yi Chunfeng is too arrogant. He really thinks that he is invincible after defeating Xian Ziwei. Copper Sword Emissary is a 4-star Tao ancestor. His strength is unfathomable. He is not someone he can fight against. Yes, this time he will suffer. I think that if he does not surrender, he will most likely be killed by Copper Sword Emissary. The scene of Yi Chunfeng defeating Xian Ziwei was shocking. However, Xian Ziwei was only a 2-star Tao ancestor. There was an insurmountable gap between her and Copper Sword Emissary, who was a 4-star Tao ancestor. It could be said that Copper Sword Emissary only needed one move to defeat Xian Ziwei. Primordial Bloodline, Burn. Copper Sword Emissary slashed with his sword. Yi Chunfeng did not hold back. He quickly burned the powerful Primordial Bloodline, instantly increasing his strength to the peak of the 2-star Tao ancestor level. Then he merged with the Godblood Bead, increasing his strength to the 3-star Tao ancestor level. His physical strength also increased exponentially. In the end, it skyrocketed to 15,000 million gene of strength. Boom! Yi Chunfeng raised the Demon Sealing Sword, which had merged with an ancestor-level sword soul, and clashed with Copper Sword Emissary's invincible sword. Just as everyone thought that Yi Chunfeng would be severely injured, even if he did not die, the scene in front of them was beyond their expectations. They widened their eyes and were almost stunned. After the collision, Copper Sword Emissary's Skyfall sword light was continuously shattered. The Demon Sealing Sword, which was filled with 15,000 million gene of strength, crashed heavily into Copper Sword Emissary's rusty longsword. The sudden explosion of power shook Copper Sword Emissary, causing him to lose control of his body. Blood flowed from his perlicue as his entire body was sent flying. My God! Am I seeing things? Copper Sword Emissary, a 4-star Tao ancestor, is not his match? Was he hiding his strength in the previous few battles? The eyes of the experts from the various major powers nearly fell out of their sockets. Xian Ziwei, who had been defeated by Yi Chunfeng, was even more shocked. She did not expect that after using all her strength and using her strongest technique, she would still be unable to force Yi Chunfeng to use his true strength. How can he be so strong? How did he cultivate? Xian Ziwei stared at Yi Chunfeng. While she felt frustrated, she also developed a strong interest in Yi Chunfeng. Copper Sword Emissary, show me your true strength. After forcing Copper Sword Emissary back with one sword strike, Yi Chunfeng revealed an arrogant look. He raised the Demon Sealing Sword high and pointed it at Copper Sword Emissary. Good. Yi Chunfeng, I have underestimated you. Copper Sword Emissary's eyes shone with a terrifying light as he said, I will let you know the consequences of angering me. As he spoke, Copper Sword Emissary unlocked a powerful seal in his body. A thick sword intent burst out from his strong body, instantly increasing his strength to the peak of the 4-star Tao ancestor level. He posed a great threat to Yi Chunfeng. Go to hell! Copper Sword Emissary roared. He held his rusty ancestral artifact longsword and launched a fierce attack at Yi Chunfeng. The tide-like attacks were like a storm, tearing the entire space apart. Infinite chaos. Copper Sword Emissary attacked in anger. Yi Chunfeng immediately used the supreme magic that he had created. He slashed out with his sword. The towering shadow of the chaotic divine tree, which emitted the light of the chaotic 5 elements, broke out of his body. It turned into an endless amount of chaotic power and merged into the Demon Sealing Sword. It messed up the entire space and tore apart Copper Sword Emissary's continuous attack. It was like a meteor crashing into Earth. It collided with Copper Sword Emissary in midair. Boom! There was an earth-shattering explosion at the peak of Sky Sword Mountain. The terrifying power destroyed the entire space, piercing a huge hole in the thick clouds and illuminating a rare bright sun. Although Yi Chunfeng's infinite chaos was powerful, Copper Sword Emissary had the strength of a peak 4-star Tao ancestor. He was evenly matched with Copper Sword Emissary. Copper Sword Emissary suppressed the roiling blood in his body and continued to attack Yi Chunfeng with his killing move. Suddenly, Yi Chunfeng's forehead cracked open, revealing the ferocious eye of the ancestral dragon. When the eye of the ancestral dragon opened, thousands of rays of light shot out like billions of stars. They attacked Copper Sword Emissary, whose expression changed drastically. They directly pierced through his killing move, tore through his body's defenses, and sent him flying. Copper Sword Emissary, let me send you to hell. After using the eye of the ancestral dragon to severely injure Copper Sword Emissary, Yi Chunfeng immediately summoned the supreme-grade ancestral artifact, the Death Scythe. He used the Way of Equipment control to increase the attack power of the Death Scythe to the maximum and threw it out with all his strength. No! Copper Sword Emissary saw tens of thousands of ancestral glyphs light up at the same time. The Death Scythe was filled with destructive power, and it was getting closer and closer. Unable to dodge, he used his rusty sword to attack with all his strength. However, the rusty sword in his hand was only a low-grade ancestral artifact. It could not block the most powerful Death Scythe. Crack! The rusty iron sword was cut in half by the Death Scythe. The Death Scythe's power did not decrease at all. Under the horrified gaze of the Bronze Sword Emissary, it cut open his strong body and crushed his powerful soul, killing him on the spot. Chapter 1889. Gu! Bronze Sword Emissary is dead. He was killed by Yi Chunfeng. After witnessing the scene of Bronze Sword Emissary being killed by the Death Scythe, everyone was dumbfounded. They looked at Yi Chunfeng with fear in their eyes. Grand Elder, what should we do? Although the Chijua Sword Palace was the head of the three great sword palaces in the sword domain, only Palace Master Zhu Wuqing could suppress Bronze Sword Emissary. Even Zhu Yanlong was slightly weaker than Bronze Sword Emissary. But now, the strongest Bronze Sword Emissary had been mercilessly killed by Yi Chunfeng, causing everyone in the Chijua Sword Palace to be at a loss. Roar! The death of Bronze Sword Emissary had completely enraged the three-star demon ancestor bloodthirsty fiend wolf. It angrily roared as its eyes shot out a thick bloody light. It opened its mouth full of fangs and crazily attacked Yi Chunfeng. The bloodthirsty fiend wolf's attack was activated. Yi Chunfeng, who had endless ancestral power, did not dodge. He punched out with a force of 1,000,000,000 Jin, instantly exploding and bombarding the bloodthirsty fiend wolf's body. With one punch, the bloodthirsty fiend wolf was sent flying. Sounds of bones breaking could be heard from its huge body. Roar! Just as the heavily injured bloodthirsty fiend wolf continued to attack without any regard for its life, the eye of the ancestral dragon on Yi Chunfeng's forehead continued to shoot out rays of killing light. They directly pierced through the bloodthirsty fiend wolf's heavily injured body, riddling it with holes. It fell onto the thick snow, dyeing a large patch of snow red as it breathed its last breath. A three-star demon ancestor bloodthirsty fiend wolf was killed just like that. What level of treasure is that vertical eye on his forehead? How can it be so powerful? Seeing Yi Chunfeng killing the bloodthirsty fiend wolf so effortlessly, the experts from the 3 sects and 2 clans were trembling in fear. As for the sect master of the heaven-shaking sword sect, Zhen Taohai, who had threatened to fight Yi Chunfeng to the death, was so scared that his face turned pale. He wanted to find a place to hide so that Yi Chunfeng would not find him. Set up the 7-sword formation. The strength that Yi Chunfeng displayed was extremely horrifying. However, it did not frighten Zhu Yanlong. Zhu Yanlong quickly summoned an extremely powerful formation diagram that flickered with the Big Dipper. Then, he set up the 7 absolute sword formation with 7 ancestor realm experts. 7-sword formation. Looking at Zhu Yanlong and the others who had fused with the formation map and stood in the shape of the Big Dipper, Yi Chunfeng's delicate face did not reveal a trace of panic. Since you're looking for death, I'll fulfill your wish. With that, Yi Chunfeng took a step forward and summoned the soaring immortal sword. With a powerful sword might, he charged at the heptagon sword formation. 7 Zhu sword slash. As Yi Chenfeng closed in, Zhu Yanlong, who was in charge of controlling the center of the formation, immediately mobilized the power of the entire 7 absolute sword formation and slashed towards Yi Chenfeng. Not only did this sword fuse the power of the array diagram, but it also fused the power of 7 great ancestor realm experts. The sword power virtually reached the full power strike of a 5-star Dao ancestor. 100 layers of space restriction. As the heptagon sword attacked, Yi Chenfeng immediately mobilized the powerful power of space and formed 100 layers of restrictions in front of him to block the attack of the heptagon sword. Chi. 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 When the heptagon sword, which was astonishingly powerful, slashed the layers of the 100 layers of space restriction, it constantly shattered the layers of restrictions. However, when the heptagon sword formation broke the 100 layers of space restriction, Yi Chenfeng's figure was long gone, causing the attack of the heptagon sword formation to miss. Zhu Yanlong, don't look for me. I'm here. Yi Chenfeng's cold voice appeared behind the heptagon sword formation. Heptagon sword slash again. Zhu Yanlong's face darkened as he continuously activated the attack power of the heptagon sword formation. He slashed out waves of extremely powerful sword light to attack Yi Chenfeng. However, Yi Chenfeng's movement speed was too fast. The powerful sword light that tore through space could not hurt him at all. As for Zhu Yanlong and the others who were continuously attacking, they consumed a lot of energy. Sigh, I didn't expect such an unforeseen event to happen in the battle for the Sword Palace. Looking at Yi Chenfeng, who was like a ghost, constantly moving in midair to dodge the attacks of the heptagon sword formation, the leader of the Xianjian Cave Heaven, Xian Yi, sighed softly. Father, who do you think will have the last laugh? Xian Ziwei, whose confidence had been greatly damaged, gently bit her alluring red lips and asked in a low voice. Although I want the heptagon sword palace to win, from the current situation, Yi Chenfeng has a higher chance of winning. Moreover, I have a feeling that Yi Chenfeng still has a trump card that he hasn't used yet. Xian Yi shook his head and said, It can't be, father. Yi Chenfeng is already very powerful. Don't tell me he's still hiding his strength. Xian Xia said in disbelief. Sir, you know that Yi Chenfeng is not only facing the heptagon sword palace. He killed Bronze Sword Envoy in front of everyone, which is equivalent to offending the Heavenly Sword Hall. If he doesn't have absolute strength, he wouldn't dare to do so. Xian Yi said. Sigh, this guy is really a monster. However, he is quite compatible with my sister. Xian Xia sighed softly. Little girl, what nonsense are you talking about? Xian Ziwei's face darkened, but 2 intoxicating red spots appeared on her white and tender earlobes. Challenging the Heavenly Sword Hall? Is this guy really that bold? Thinking about how she had just ridiculed Yi Chenfeng for overestimating himself, but now it seemed that her ridicule was so ignorant, the peerless goddess of the Qian family, Qian Bingzi, smiled bitterly. Time passed by minute. Yi Chenfeng used his sword steps and constantly moved around in the shattered space, dodging the attacks of the heptagon sword formation. As the battle was too intense, it affected most of the space on the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain, scaring the experts of the major factions to the edge of the Sky Sword Mountain. If the peak of the Sky Sword Mountain hadn't been sealed by the people of the heptagon sword palace, the experts of the major factions would have long fled this place. After attacking for so long, I think you guys should be tired. Now, it's my turn to attack. The powerful God-Eater brain could sense that Zhu Yanlong and the others were exhausted, and the power of the heptagon sword formation was decreasing. Yi Chenfeng stopped dodging and summoned the upper-grade ancestral artifact, the Life and Death Plate, to attack the heptagon sword formation. F***CK, another ancestral artifact. Could it be that Yi Chenfeng inherited the legacy of an old sword god? Feeling the invincible ancestral aura from the Life and Death Plate, the experts of the major factions who were hiding in the distance were shocked again. Rumble. The life and death plate shook, and the terrifying life and death force passed through the heptagon sword diagram and attacked Zhu Yanlong and the others. When Zhu Yanlong forcibly mobilized the heptagon sword formation to attack the life and death plate, Yi Qinfeng's entire body merged with the flying fairy sword and stabbed forward with the soulless sword. As the sword stabbed out, the 4 ancestral Dao diagrams gushed out from his body. When he merged with the 4 ancestral Dao diagrams, the soulless sword's attack power instantly soared to the extreme. The sword slashed through the heptagon sword diagram's defense and stabbed a heptagon sword palace's ancestral artifact expert who couldn't dodge in time. Bang! After being attacked by Yi Qinfeng's soulless sword, the heptagon sword palace's ancestral artifact expert's body was immediately pierced through, turning into a cloud of blood mist and dying on the spot. After killing one person, the heptagon sword formation was instantly broken. At this time, Yi Qinfeng raised the power of the 4 ancestral Dao intents to the extreme and struck out the 3000 transformation God Fist, bombarding Zhu Yanlong and the others at close range. Although Zhu Yanlong controlled the heptagon sword diagram to defend with all his might, 2 ancestral artifact experts were still killed by the 3000 transformation God Fist. Chapter 1890. 4 ancestral Dao diagrams destroyed the 7 extinction sword formation and destroyed the 3 Dao ancestors of the 7 extinction sword palace. Is this guy really human? The scene before their eyes caused everyone to stiffen in place. Their minds went blank and they were dumbfounded. 7 extinction sword strike. The death of the 3 Dao ancestors of the 7 extinction sword palace completely enraged Zhu Yanlong. He burned his powerful bloodline power at all costs, and launched a killing move at Yi Qinfeng at close range. Ancestral Dragon's Eye. Zhu Yanlong transformed into endless sword light and attacked. The ancestral dragon's eye on Yi Qinfeng's forehead immediately shot out endless light, penetrating Zhu Yanlong's 7 extinction sword strike, and forcibly forcing him back. Swish, swish, swish. When Yi Qinfeng used the ancestral dragon's eye to forcibly force Zhu Yanlong back, the 3 7 extinction sword palace ancestral realm experts who were lucky enough to escape attacked Yi Qinfeng at the same time. As they were too close to each other, and the speed of their furious attacks was extremely fast, Yi Qinfeng was unable to dodge, and was pierced by the 3 incomparably sharp low-grade ancestral swords. Mid-grade ancestral artifact. Just as the onlookers were guessing that Yi Qinfeng's body would be pierced by the 3 low-grade ancestral swords, they were horrified to discover that Yi Qinfeng's body had an extremely strong defensive power, engraved with a large number of profound dragon patterns, and inlaid with 2 ferocious dragon heads on the shoulders, had appeared on the surface of Yi Qinfeng's body. And the scene of the dragon armor easily blocking the attacks of the 3 low-grade ancestral swords, the onlookers guessed that Yi Qinfeng's ancestral armor was most likely a mid-grade ancestral armor. In the entire sword domain, there were no more than 3 people who possessed a mid-grade ancestral armor. Who are you? Zhu Yanlong's heart trembled when he saw that Yi Qinfeng even had a mid-grade ancestral armor. Although he was powerful, and his attack power was even more impressive, Yi Qinfeng's combat power was too terrifying, and coupled with the mid-grade ancestral armor's defense, it would be extremely difficult to kill him. What you should be thinking about now is not my identity, but whether or not you can survive. Yi Qinfeng sneered. He sped up the flow of time by 10 times and increased his attack speed to the limit. He ferociously attacked Zhu Yanlong and the other 3. Disciples of the Qijua Sword Palace, disciples of the mysterious Sword Grotto, disciples of the 3 sects and 2 clans, heed my command. Quickly follow me to kill the enemy. Yi Qinfeng's attacks were too ferocious, and his defense was beyond imagination. Helpless, Zhu Yanlong ordered loudly, preparing to gather everyone's strength to kill Yi Qinfeng. Father, should we make a move? The hesitant Xian Xia looked at the gloomy Xian Yi when she heard the absolute flame dragon's roar. Don't attack. Before Xian Yi could speak, Xian Ziwei spoke. If we don't do anything, will Great Elder Zhu blame us? Xian Xia said worriedly. Zhu Yanlong doesn't dare to offend us. Moreover, Yi Chunfeng must have some trump cards that he hasn't used yet. I think he will have the last laugh. Xian Ziwei said. That's right, I agree with Ziwei's suggestion. We choose to stand aside and not attack. Xian Yi nodded. The mysterious sword grotto ignored Zhu Yanlong's order, but the experts of the 3 sects and 2 clans didn't dare to disobey. The experts of the heaven-shaking swordsmanship sect, who had a grudge against Yi Chunfeng, rushed out first and surrounded Yi Chunfeng. They interweaved tens of thousands of sword lights and attacked his body continuously. Father, don't be impulsive. This Yi Chunfeng isn't someone we can offend. Our Qian family can't get involved. Just as the Qian family was about to join forces with the other forces to besiege Yi Chunfeng, Qian Bingzi grabbed the arm of her father, the head of the Qian family, and said loudly, Bingzi, do you think Yi Chunfeng will win? The head of the Qian family, Qian Tong, frowned slightly. Father, believe me, Yi Chunfeng isn't someone the 7-Sword Palace can deal with. Even if we help, it won't be of much use. It might even cause our Qian family to be annihilated. Qian Bingzi bit her lips and said, But, Father, let's make a bet. If we win, this will be the opportunity for our Qian family to rise. Qian Bingzi said, But if we lose, there will be no place for our Qian family in the sword realm. Qian Tong said with a worried face, Lose? Father, do you think Yi Chunfeng will lose? Qian Bingzi glanced at Yi Chunfeng, who looked like a celestial being, and said, Sigh, all right. Our Qian family will make a bet. Qian Tong found that the mysterious sword grotto didn't interfere. He gritted his teeth and made a difficult decision. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. Primitive Tao Fetus, Fiend God Torch Dragon, Peacock King, Chaos Divine Beast, come out. Although Yi Chunfeng's strength was shocking and he was wearing a mid-grade ancestral artifact, the dragon armor, he still couldn't handle the combined attacks of the major forces. With a thought, he summoned many helpers. As for the divine Dao Su, the pinnacle evil ancestor, and other helpers, he continued to hide. This was because if the Heavenly Sword Palace knew that he had a pinnacle ancestor protecting him, they might inform the heavenly race and cause a series of unnecessary troubles. When the Fiend God Torch Dragon and the others appeared, they immediately unleashed their strongest attacks and tore apart the line of defense of the major forces. The Fiend God Torch Dragon was a 3-star Dao ancestor, and the primitive Tao Fetus combat strength had reached 4-star. In addition to the Peacock King, the Chaos Divine Beast's strength surpassed the experts of the 3 sects and 2 clans. Soon, the casualties of the experts of the 3 sects and 2 clans began to increase. In the chaotic space, clouds of blood mist were constantly erupting, dyeing the sacred peak of the sky sword mountain blood red. It's you. When Powentian saw the primitive Tao Fetus, he immediately recognized that it was the person who destroyed the ancestral vein and killed the law-vanquishing sword. Boom! Just as his heart was trembling, the primitive Tao Fetus threw a punch at him. The fist radiance that shattered the void directly blasted his body, killing him with a single punch. Phew, Bingzi, fortunately, I listened to your decision just now. Otherwise, my Qian family would really be finished. Seeing the scene before him, Qian Tong let out a long sigh of relief, and said with lingering fear, This Yi Chunfeng hid too deeply. I really want to know who he is. Qian Bingzi was also attracted by Yi Chunfeng's martial prowess and methods. Her beautiful big eyes revealed an expression that was getting brighter and brighter. 7 absolutes break all laws. Looking at the situation that was completely out of control, Zhu Yanlong didn't retreat. He constantly spat out mouthfuls of blood essence and stimulated his own potential. He used the powerful killer moves of the 7 Absolutes Sword Palace to attack Yi Chunfeng. However, under Yi Qinfeng's control of the life and death plate, Zhu Yanlong's killer moves were constantly crushed by the life and death plate. Life and death plate, decide life and death. Yi Qinfeng had endless ancestral power. He continuously injected ancestral power into the life and death plate, controlling it to constantly expand and release an endless black and white light of life and death to attack the surroundings. Shrill screams rang out one after another. Several experts of the Seven Absolutes Sword Palace, who couldn't dodge in time, were hit by the light of life and death released by the life and death plate. The vitality in their bodies was instantly destroyed. They fell onto the blood-stained snowy ground and died. Quickly open the seal. Seeing the experts of the Seven Absolutes Sword Palace dying one after another, Zhu Yanlong's psychological defense had completely collapsed. He was flustered and exasperated as he ordered. Want to escape? It's too late, Yi Qinfeng sneered. He summoned the dragon head ancestral bow and killed the experts of the Seven Absolutes Sword Palace who wanted to open the seal. Another ancestral artifact. Chapter 1891. Yi Qinfeng, even if I become a ghost, I will not let you go. Since his escape route was sealed, Zhu Yanlong knew that he could only fight with his life. He performed the secret skill of Qijua Sword Palace and burned his own life force to increase his strength. For a short period of time, he had the battle prowess of a 5-star Dao ancestor. Life God Art. Yi Qinfeng didn't expect Zhu Yanlong to know a life God Art that was similar to the Life Spirit spell. He sensed a strong sense of danger from Zhu Yanlong's body. However, even though Zhu Yanlong's battle prowess had skyrocketed to the extreme and posed a great threat to Yi Qinfeng, he had almost sacrificed all of his life force. No matter the result, he would die for sure. Die with I. Zhu Yanlong roared furiously. He held a low-grade ancestral sword and slashed towards Yi Qinfeng. He wanted to use his powerful life force to kill Yi Qinfeng. At this critical moment, the primitive embryo of Dao suddenly stood in front of Yi Qinfeng and blocked Zhu Yanlong's fatal attack with its indestructible body. This is the primitive embryo of Dao. Zhu Yanlong's eyesight was much better than Pawentian's. Sensing the ancestral power from the primitive embryo of Dao, Zhu Yanlong immediately guessed its origin. That's right. Yi Qinfeng nodded and handed over the scythe of death to him. Primitive embryo of Dao, kill him with me. Yes. The primitive embryo of Dao nodded and slashed towards Zhu Yanlong with the scythe of death. After performing the life God art, Zhu Yanlong's battle prowess skyrocketed and was comparable to a 5-star Dao ancestor. However, the primitive embryo of Dao was not much weaker than him. In addition, the scythe of death was a supreme-grade ancestral weapon. In the hands of the primitive embryo of Dao, half of its power could be unleashed. This posed a great threat and trouble to Zhu Yanlong. Yi Qinfeng, if you have the guts, fight me fair and square. Being attacked by the original embryo of Dao in a row, Zhu Yanlong felt that his blood was boiling inside his body. He roared like an angry lion. Are you an idiot? Why should I fight you fair and square? Yi Qinfeng was speechless. Why don't you just stretch out your neck and let me cut you? You what? Yi Qinfeng continued to mock. You are stronger than me, you are older than me, and you are using your life god art to fight me. What else do you want? Are you invincible just because you're thick-skinned? Brat, I will kill you. Zhu Yanlong didn't expect Yi Qinfeng's mouth to be so poisonous. He was so angry that his whole body trembled. The flames in his eyes seemed to want to melt Yi Qinfeng. Kill me? Maybe in your next life. As he spoke, the ferocious ancestral dragon's eye on Yi Qinfeng's forehead continuously shot out rays of light, attacking the absolute flame dragon. Under the attacks of the two extreme ancestral auras, the absolute flame dragon's attacks were greatly affected. He couldn't pose a threat to Yi Qinfeng at all. Meanwhile, under the crazy attacks of the fiend god candle dragon, the chaos divine beast, and the Peacock King, the 3 sects and 1 family suffered heavy casualties. The 7 Sword Palace's warriors were all slaughtered and turned into minced meat. No, don't kill us, we know we are wrong, please spare us. Looking at the minced bodies on the ground and the fiend god Candle Dragon and the other fiend god Candle Dragon, the warriors of the 3 sects and 1 family had their psychological defense completely collapsed. They fled in panic while begging for mercy. Don't show any mercy, kill them all. Yi Chunfeng showed no mercy to his enemies. He ordered the fiend god Candle Dragon and the others to kill mercilessly. Yi Chunfeng, you will not have a good ending. Zhen Taohai, whose left arm had been chopped off and his body was covered in bloody wounds, let out a desperate roar. He rushed towards Yi Chunfeng with a surge of blood qi. He wanted to self-destruct his saint spirit to deal a fatal blow to Yi Chunfeng. You want to hurt my boss? In your next life. Before Zhen Taohai, who had burned his saint spirit, could get close, the Chaos Divine Beast turned into a Chaos Mountain and descended from the sky. He sat on Zhen Taohai's head and smashed him to the ground, creating a huge pit in the ground. His body and head were shattered. Pfft. Then, a powerful airflow came out of the Chaos Divine Beast's butt. It was like a sharp sword that crushed Zhen Taohai's fragile soul, killing him instantly. Roar, roar, this feels so good. The Chaos Divine Beast stood up and roared, who else? Yi Chunfeng, I admit defeat today, but don't be happy too early. The Heavenly Sword Hall will avenge us. Looking at the situation in front of him, Zhu Yanlong knew that he was powerless. However, he believed that no matter how strong Yi Chunfeng was, he would not be stronger than the Heavenly Sword Hall and the Sword God. Sooner or later, Yi Chunfeng would be killed by the Sword God. Don't worry, it won't be long before I go to the Heavenly Sword Hall and pay a visit to the Sword God. Yi Chunfeng smiled arrogantly and said, but you won't live to see that day. As he said that, Yi Chunfeng suddenly used Soulless Sword, crushing the sharp sword rays and piercing through Zhu Yanlong's body. Yi Chunfeng, die with me. Zhu Yanlong's body was penetrated. He was like an octopus, clasping Yi Chunfeng's body tightly. He detonated his Saint Core and launched a fatal attack on him. Boom! An explosive force that could shatter space erupted from Zhu Yanlong's body, directly smashing a black hole in the chaotic space. An endless storm spread out, covering everything. Dead, Yi Chunfeng is dead. Seeing that Zhu Yanlong was actually hugging Yi Chunfeng and self-destructing at the last moment, Xian Ziwei, Qian Bingzi, and the others who were hiding in the distance widened their eyes in disbelief. Sigh, this Yi Chunfeng is too careless. He will never know how terrifying a person who is going to die is. If he is more careful, maybe. Xian Yi gently shook his head, but before he could finish his words, he saw a proud figure walking out of the explosion storm, and he was not injured at all. How is this possible? Xian Yi knew how terrifying the power of a 4-star Dao ancestor's self-destruction was. Even a mid-grade ancestral artifact might not be able to withstand it, but Yi Chunfeng was not injured at all. It could be said that Yi Chunfeng was heaven-defying beyond his imagination. End this quickly and kill them all. After using the undying divine ability to instantly repair his broken body, Yi Chunfeng mercilessly ordered. In less than 10 breaths, the remaining experts of the 3 sects and 1 clan were mercilessly killed by the Godfiend Torch Dragon, the Chaos Divine Beast, and the others. The entire Sky Sword Mountain turned into a purgatory, terrifying everyone. Young Master Yi, the Qian family is willing to submit to you. Seeing that Yi Chunfeng took away everyone's belongings and walked over with the Godfiend Torch Dragon and the others, the frightened Qian Tong's legs went soft, and he directly knelt on the blood-stained snowy ground. As for the beautiful and flirtatious Qian Bingzi, she looked deeply at Yi Chunfeng before obediently kneeling down. Although the mystic Sword Grotto Heaven and the others did not kneel, they all bent down at this moment. You are very smart to not choose to go against me. Yi Chunfeng glanced at the experts of the 2 forces and said, I have always been unwilling to kill. As long as you don't become my enemy in the future, I will not make things difficult for you. Unwilling to kill? Looking at the broken bodies on the ground, the corner of Qian Tong's mouth twitched. He respectfully kowtowed and said, "Thank you, young Master Yi, for not killing us. I promise you that the Qian family will never become your enemy." "What about you?" Yi Chunfeng looked at Xuani and the others. "Yi Chunfeng, although you are very strong, I will surpass you and defeat you." Xian Ziwei did not back down. She looked into Yi Chunfeng's eyes and swore. Xian Ziwei's challenge made Xuani and the others tremble. They were afraid that Yi Chunfeng would kill them in a fit of anger. "Haha, I will wait for this day." Yi Chunfeng still admired the cold and beautiful Xian Ziwei. In her, Yi Chunfeng saw his own shadow. He did not bicker with her and said, "Let's go. We will go to the heaven-shaking sword sect."